Is everybody ready? This is so exciting. I feel like I'm launching the space shuttle or something. All righty. Okay, members, I am going to call the meeting to order. Welcome to the first meeting of the term of the Toronto East York Community Council. My name is Gord Perks. I am the chair of the Toronto East York Community Council. The clerk has confirmed that we have quorum, so I'm calling the meeting to order. Today's meeting is being held with members of council and city staff participating both by video conference and in person at City Hall in Committee Room 1. Toronto City Hall is once again open to the public, and anyone is welcome to attend the meeting in Committee Room 1 today. The public may continue to participate electronically by video conference. This meeting is also being live streamed online at youtube.com/Toronto City Council Live. The clerk's staff have connected remote public speakers to the meeting by video conference, and there are public speakers in the room with us today. The list of speakers can be viewed online by visiting the Toronto East York Community Council page at toronto.ca/council and clicking the speakers box for today's meeting. I ask everyone for their patience with any delays and technical issues. Members, the clerk has provided all agenda materials on toronto.ca/council and on CMP, the clerk's meeting portal. Clerk's IT staff will also be available to members in the chamber and remotely if you need help with your devices. As part of each agenda item, I will ask members to raise their hand or unmute their microphone if they wish to speak or question staff. I will then create a speakers list and will call on members when it is their turn to speak. When voting on an item or a motion, I ask that members ensure that they turn on their video if applicable and to raise their hand to indicate their vote. Members, this is a paperless meeting. Haha, I have paper. And I want to remind you that you must submit and approve your motions by email. Did everybody get that? You must submit and approve your motions by email. Staff are available at teycc@toronto.ca to help with motions. Although we are in different locations and meeting remotely today, the Community Council would like to acknowledge that the land we are meeting on is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. Members, are there any declarations of interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act? If you do have an interest, please raise your hand and or unmute your mic. Well, everyone's here, so I'll stop with the microphone thing. Any conflicts of interest? Seeing none, we can now proceed to the agenda. For the members who are new, typically what we do is we do a rundown of all the items one by one at the beginning of the meeting, excepting any statutory meetings which are timed. Today we have no statutory meetings, so we will be running through the items starting at number 1. What I will do is I will call the local councillor's name when it is a ward-specific item and ask how you want to dispose of it. If you want to approve the staff recommendations, just say move to approve the staff recommendations. If you have an amendment, just say I have an amendment, read your amendment, speak to it. If there are deputations, I will indicate that so we know that the item will be held for deputations. If you are still working with staff and are unsure of how you want to handle the item, you can say please hold that item and we'll put it to the end of the agenda. Okay? Additionally, there's been a change to the way we handle new business. We have a formal deadline for items to be put on the agenda. That we now have a second deadline, which is the day prior at noon. Yes. The day before the meeting at noon, you can submit new business items. They then get posted on the city's website in advance of the meeting, but we still need a motion to introduce them. If you are unable to get your motion through by noon the day prior, you can still bring it, but here's the change. We have to introduce them one at a time. We can't do it as a package as we used to. and they have to be put up for public transparency reasons so that members of the public viewing the meeting can see them. They then will be posted to the city's website, and we will hold them for a few minutes so that members of the public have an opportunity to review them before we move into a debate on them. Okay? Councillor Fletcher?
Yeah, for all the new items that are here, and there's quite a few.
Yes, there are.
They are on the agenda, so I'm assuming you are going to, we will introduce those in the agenda review,
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
And then they can be voted on right away if they're quick items.
For the items that were submitted to the clerk prior to noon yesterday,
That are on this agenda,
if I may,
yeah,
how I will handle them is at the end of the agenda rundown, I will ask for a motion to formally introduce them. That's items 20 through 44. If that motion passes, and we can do it as a group because they're all publicly posted. Then, since they're already publicly posted, we can go through those items one at a time and approve them without delay.
so we don't need to wait till we've gone through everything else to go back to those. They can be expedited in that.
Yes, it's
'Cause they're
only the items-
They're in the public realm now, yeah,
Yes, it will only be any items added after this,
or any held items.
or any held items.
Okay.
Okay?
Yep, good.
All right. So I'm sure you all know exactly what you're doing now, and we're ready to dive in. So, I'll just get the right bit of paper for the paperless meeting. So we will run through the agenda items in order now. The first item is TE 1.1260 through 322 King Street West zoning amendment application, removal of the holding symbol H, final report, Ward 10. Councillor Malik, what would you like to do?
I move to approve the staff recommendations.
All those in favor, opposed, carried. Item TE 1.2, 221 to 225 and 227 Sterling Road, zoning bylaw amendment, draft plan of subdivision and rental housing demolition applications, request for direction report. Councillor Bravo.
I'd like to hold the item for questions to staff.
Thank you. Item, I need my pen. Okay. Item TE 1.3, 83 through 95A Bloor Street West zoning amendment application and site plan control applications, request for direction report. Councillor Sachs. All those in favor, opposed, carried. Item TE 1.4, 645 through 655 Northcliffe Boulevard, zoning bylaw amendment application, request for direction report. Councillor Matlow.
I move to approve.
All those in favor, opposed, carried. Item TE 1.5, 5 through 15 Raglan Avenue, zoning bylaw amendment, rental housing demolition and site plan control applications, request for direction report. Councillor Matlow.
I move to approve it.
All those in favor, opposed, carried. Item TE 1.6, 415 Broadview Avenue, official plan and zoning bylaw amendment, request for direction report. Councillor Fletcher.
I believe there's a deputant. Thank you.
There are deputants on this? Oh, sorry. I got to keep all my lists together. Apologies, guys. I'm working off 4 different sets of documents here. Okay. Deps. Item TE 1.7759 through 763 Queen Street East zoning bylaw amendment and site plan control applications, request for direction report. Councillor Fletcher. Okay. Item TE 1.8320 Front Street West, application for fence exemption. Councillor Malik.
I move to approve staff recommendation for option 2, please.
You move option 2. We have to put that up for a sec. It's just so much fun saying Councillor Malik. I love it. Okay, that's the one you want? All right. All those in favor, opposed, carried. Item TE 1.9, 191 Dunvegan Road, application for fence exemption, Ward 12. It's going to take me a while. Councillor Matlow.
I
Oh, we have
understand
depths
there
on
may be
this.
depth, yeah.
Okay. Okay, item 10, which is 624 Davenport, we have deputations. Item 11, which is 1 Bloor Street West, we have deputations. Item 12, 110 through 116 Avenue Road, realignment of permit parking area 5E to exclude the development. Councillor Sachs. All those in favor, opposed, carried. Item TE 1.13, 838 through 848 Broadview Avenue, realignment of permit parking area 8A to exclude the development. Councillor Fletcher.
Going to hold that for a second, please?
Okay. Item TE 1.14, 380 Donlands Avenue, realignment of permit parking area 8F to exclude the development. Councillor Fletcher.
Yes, I'll move that, but I have another motion that I believe the clerk has. Pardon? Okay, that's fine. Pardon me?
We just need a minute.
That's fine. Thank you
We'll
so
hold
much.
that.
Yep.
Okay. Item TE 1.15, Adelaide Street East and Ontario Street pedestrian crossing protection. Councillor Moyse.
I move to approve with the staff's recommendation.
You did that very well. All those in favor, opposed, that carries. Item TE 1.16, Garden Crescent and Domi Road, pay and display parking. Councillor Bradford.
Thanks. I'd like to motion to deny the staff recommendations here.
Sorry, which one, 16?
Okay.
Yeah. No pay and display.
16.
All right. So on Councillor Bradford's motion, all those in favor, opposed, that carries. Item TE 1.17, O'Connor Drive, pay and display parking. Councillor Bradford.
Thank you. I'd like to move the motion to deny the staff recommendations on this as well.
Okay. Yep. All right.
Are you on the TPA still?
Sure you've all taken time to read that, think through the public policy implications, and weigh it carefully. All those in favor of the motion, opposed if any, that carries. Item TE 1.18, implementation of permit parking on Pape Avenue between Kings Park Boulevard and Gertrude Place. Councillor Fletcher.
Yes, I'd like to move these recommendations, but also just.
Oh, sorry, I've been informed there are deputations.
Okay.
My bad, I'm
Thank
just
you.
not in my rhythm yet today, guys. I will
Okay.
get there.
It's all right, Gord, don't worry
I
about it.
will get there. Item TE 1.19, Amsterdam Avenue and Glenburn Avenue, all-way stop control. Councillor Bradford.
I'd like to move the recommendations in my letter, please. Do you want to post that?
Okay, so on the recommendations in Councillor Bradford's letter, all those in favor, opposed if any, that carries. Members, I now need a motion to introduce items TE 1.20 through TE 1.44.
Motion?
Councillor Bradford has moved it. All those in favor, opposed, that carries. Okay, we can dive straight into these. Appointments. Oh, actually, I'm going to, even though the first item here is mine, I'm going to give a little sermon. Members, it literally is twice as much work for the clerk's office when an item is submitted past the regular deadline. So I encourage you all in future to get the items in well in advance of the meeting. Occasionally, you know, for like items like this, my office receives the correspondence late and I have no choice. But please, for the sake of Ellen and her hard-working team, the hardest working team of any committee secretariat by far, in future, let's do better in terms of getting stuff in on time. Okay.
Mr. Chair, I'm happy to try, but with my mega ward and everything going on, it might not be possible, and I know the clerks understand the pressure.
I do.
So that's all I wanted to say.
Yep.
Thank you so much.
Okay. So now, in an exercise in hypocrisy, I've got 3 items from my office. Item TE 1.20, appointments to the Board of Management of the Swansea Town Hall Community Centre. I move the recommendations in my letter. All those in favor, opposed, carried. Item TE 1.21, installation of an accessible parking space on Armadale Avenue. I'm going to move approval. All those in favor, opposed, if any, that carries. Item TE 1.22, parking amendments on Alhambra Avenue. I'm going to move the recommendations. All those in favor, opposed, if any, that carries. Item TE 1.23, all-way stop control at the intersection of Chadwick Avenue and Gardner Road.
That's me.
Councillor Matlow.
I move my motion.
All those in favor, opposed, carried. Item TE 1.24, implementation of a no-standing prohibition on the west side of Rushton Road between St. Clair Avenue West and Charlie Roach Lane. Councillor Matlow.
I move the motion.
All those in favor, opposed, carried. Item TE 1.25, implementation of additional speed hump on Rostravor Road between Eglinton Avenue West and Dewborn Avenue. Councillor Matlow.
I move the motion.
All those in favor, opposed, carried. Item TE 1.26, implementation of speed humps on Winona Drive between Glenhurst Avenue and Barry Avenue. Councillor Matlow.
On behalf of my neighboring councillor, Councillor Bravo, and I move the motion.
This is both wards?
Well, it's a border street, although I'm moving it, but in concurrence. I'm just saying it for the record.
I'm in support of the motion.
Okay.
Yeah, that's all.
I just have it only as Ward 12. Okay. Item TE 1.27, placement of a temporary crossing guard at the intersection of Benson Avenue and Hendrick Avenue. Councillor Matlow.
Yes.
All those in favor, opposed, carried. Item TE 1.28, reduction of speed limit on Avenue Road between Chaplin Crescent and Eglinton Avenue West. Councillor Matlow.
Move this too.
All those in favor, opposed, carried. Item TE 1.29, comprehensive traffic management plan for neighborhood streets in the Witchwood Brakendale area. Councillor Matlow.
I move this.
Item TE 1.30, Yonge Street and St. Clair Avenue Construction Hub Coordination. Councillor Matlow.
I move this, and I also want to make it clear that Chair Perk's sermon was directed entirely at me, evidently, and I just want to make that clear. Thank you.
Did you feel that? You felt that, didn't you? Okay. And I'm sure your staff are listening with attention in your office, right?
I've learned my lesson well.
Okay. So on the item, all those in favor, opposed, carried. Item TE 1.31, traffic calming on Walpole Avenue. Councillor Fletcher.
Thank you. I'm going to move this, and just reminding everybody that for speed humps, there's no longer a requirement for the city to do a formal petition. So I'll be moving this. Thank you very much.
Okay, all those in favor, opposed, carried.
Pardon me?
Item TE 1.32, 995 through 1005 Broadview Avenue and 2 through 4 Mortimer Avenue, permit parking realignment. Pick up Pepper.
Yes, thank you very much. There is a motion here,
Okay. Do you have?
I believe. You don't have one?
Hey, why don't we hold that, Councillor? Clerks don't seem to have anything at the moment. Is that all right?
Yes, it says it was submitted, but I'll check with my
Okay.
staff. Thank you.
Item TE 1.33, all-way stop at Lankin Boulevard and Judith Drive. Councillor Fletcher,
This one's good. We're just going to do that. Thank you.
just move the motion. Okay, all those in favor, opposed, carried. Item TE 1.34, all-way stop control Oak Park Avenue at Wallington Avenue. Councillor Bradford.
Thank you. I'd like to move the recommendations in my letter.
All those in favor, opposed, carried. Item TE 1.35, parking amendments Eastwood Road. Councillor Bradford.
I'd like to move the recommendations in my letter, please.
All those in favor, opposed, carried. Item TE 1.36, parking amendments Glen Manor Drive. Councillor Bradford.
I'd like to move the recommendations in my letter.
All those in favor, opposed, carried. Item TE 1.37, parking amendments Notley Place and Ferris Road, south intersection. Councillor Bradford.
Move the recommendations in my letter, please.
All those in favor, opposed, carried. Item TE 1.38, speed bump installation on laneway east of Winners Circle. I want to move to Winners Circle.
Love to have you.
North of Boardwalk Drive. Councillor Bradford.
Move the recommendations in my letter.
All those in favor, opposed, carried. Item TE 1.39, traffic calming, Amsterdam Avenue between Westview Boulevard and Victoria Park Avenue. Councillor Bradford.
Move the recommendations in my letter, please.
All those in favor, opposed, carried. Item TE 1.40, traffic calming Highcroft Road between Eastwood Road and Renson Road. Councillor Bradford.
Move the recommendations in my letter, please.
Okay, all those in favor, opposed, carried. Item TE 1.41, traffic calming Kenilworth Avenue West Branch between Queen Street East and the north end of Kenilworth Avenue West Branch. Councillor Bradford.
Move the recommendations in my letter, please.
All those in favor, opposed, carried. Item TE 1.42, traffic calming Roblin Avenue between O'Connor Drive and Plains Road. Councillor Bradford.
Move the recommendations in my letter, please.
All those in favor, opposed, carried. Item TE 1.43, traffic calming Renson Road between Beaton Avenue and Bellhaven Road. Councillor Bradford.
Move the recommendations in my letter with thanks to Transportation Services and all their help making the streets safer in Beaches East York.
All those in favor, opposed, carried. And with the final item, Councillor Bradford trying desperately to tie up Councillor Matlow's performance. Item TE 1.44, residential demolition application 130 Scarborough Road. Councillor Bradford.
Motion to adopt recommendation 3, which is to approve the application to demolish with the conditions.
We can have number 3 up for a moment, please.
Do better, Brad. I want to see more next time.
No. We're aiming for trying to get this stuff through quicker, earlier.
So there's the motion.
There we are. Okay, we've got it. That's the one you want?
Yep.
Okay. All those in favor, opposed, carried.
Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair, item 32 that we swept by there, thought there was a motion, but it's not. It's already in the staff reports.
Okay, so members.
Oh, good. No motion, no.
Members, we can go to item TE 1.32, which is 995 through 1005 Broadview Avenue and 2 through 4 Mortimer Avenue permit parking realignment. Councillor Fletcher, you're moving the
Yes,
recommendation?
I am.
All those in favor, opposed, carried. Okay.
Also, Mr. Chair, I'd like to make sure there's someone here from Heritage Preservation Services. Is Ms. McDonald here? Someone here?
Okay, I will make sure that the clerk,
Yes. I have 2 items here for them.
okay,
Mary McDonald
Yeah.
online.
we'll make sure.
Today I'm here.
We
If I
don't-
may, I'd like Ann
Just a
to-
moment. Mary, we're not at that item yet. She just wanted to make sure, the member just wanted to make sure you were present. Okay?
Fabulous, thank you.
Thank you. Okay. I now need a motion to introduce,
Oh, no, I don't have them.
oh, we don't have them ready?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I just got them.
All right, so what we will do then is go back to item TE 1.6, which had deputations scheduled. This is 415 Broadview Avenue, official plan and zoning bylaw amendment request for direction. I have 3 deputants listed. First is Tom Grant. Tom, are you here? Tom, come on over. If we will get someone from the IT staff to come help you get set up, I'll give you a moment to do that. So Tom, the way it works is you'll have 5 minutes to make your deputation. I will start your clock. You'll be able to see the time running over there. When you get to your 5 minutes, I'll ask you to conclude your remarks. And then if members have any questions for you, we'll deal with that then. Okay. Yes. No. No, we don't. Nobody was registered and we dealt with the other. Okay. All right. Tom, the floor is yours. Oh, hang on. Okay, well, we'll give you a moment to see if that can work. And Tom, also, just so you know, when you sit down to make your presentation, there should be, are we controlling the microphone or does he? There's a button in front of the microphone. Yeah. So when you're ready, just press that and make sure it's lit up so that not only members in the room, but also people watching online can hear what you're saying. Cool? All right. 1 minute? This might be a moment where we talk amongst ourselves. You know, complain about the rain outside. I don't like rain and cold weather. The trees do need the rain. It's true. There you go.
Because one of the advantages is being able to talk to staff
I know.
during the period, so I don't know when staff are actually going to be here physically, when we're here physically at a meeting. Maybe the clerks know. What's the requirement? Oh, I'm sorry. I just said, one of the advantages of being in person is that we can just connect with staff while we're dealing with things, get our questions answered. So I'm just wondering when we will be having staff in person here, or if there's somebody I can talk to on Heritage. Pardon me?
I don't know.
So, Councillor Fletcher,
Why don't you ask, then you're the chair.
So, Councillor Fletcher, I will investigate
Thank you.
what the policy is. My memory is that at present, it's optional,
Correct.
right? And so I will investigate that and inform you. Okay?
And I would like, yes, I'd like you to let me know, because
I will do
I would
that.
like to have this offline conversation, and it's hard to do.
Yeah, it is still hard.
Shouldn't be.
Let me see about that. Okay. Robert Osborne, are you with us? Is Robert Osborne online? Yes? Okay, members, what I'm going to suggest is we go to the next deputant while IT sort out its problem. We're good with that? Okay. So, Robert, are you with us?
I am. Can you hear me?
I can, loud and clear. You're coming through great.
Perfect.
So, Robert, you're
Good.
going to have 5 minutes. You should be able to see a timer on your screen, but when you get near the end, I'll remind you anyway. Floor is yours.
Do I have to turn my camera on just before we get started? Because right now I'm just seeing a blank space in.
Don't worry
Is it
about
possible to turn the camera on?
One moment, Robert. Pardon me?
Sorry if I've thrown a
Sorry,
wrench in the
Robert.
works.
Robert, we're unable to do that remotely. And I apologize
I see.
to you, but I do want to make sure you understand we can hear you loud and clear here in the room, and people online can as well. Okay?
Just a question, though, Mr.
Okay,
Chair.
all right.
Please.
Can we not see him?
No. I've just been told by the clerks we can't at this moment.
Oh, I see.
Okay? So, Robert, with my apologies, please proceed.
Hi, you've already given my name, and I'd like to introduce myself. I'm working with a group of ad hoc families who live on mostly Simpson and Victor Avenue, people who will be most affected by this project at 419 Broadview. And to this point, I'd like to mention there are 70 families as part of the group, and that was without extensive canvassing. Other members are going to speak about some of the more technical problems with 415 Broadview. So I'm not going to bother to touch on that very much. I'm mainly going to talk about the livability factor that this development takes away from our community. And while I really truly understand that these are not strictly speaking technical points for appeal, I am hoping that as they are points that are of great concern to the community, that they will be considered. They will be taken into consideration. And so now I'll move on. And before I get going on this, I would like to also mention for the record that none of the 70 families that I have spoken to have said anything about not wanting development to take place in our neighborhood. And I will point out that there are a couple of other developments that have moved ahead, multi-residential developments, and there has not been a peep out of the neighborhood. So we are not opposed to it and opposed to those kinds of developments coming in. We're opposed to this development. And there's one reason that it's really run into this much problem, in my opinion, and that is that there has been virtually no consultation with the neighborhood, even though there has been much talk about consultation from both the church and the developer. When you look into it, there has been no consultation whatsoever. And the minute there was any consultation that occurred that ran into any kind of opposition, then the reaction for the from the developer wasn't to try to reach an accommodation. It was to basically skate around city council and the neighborhood and take it to the Ontario Land Tribunal. And I think that says a great deal. There was no reason, in my opinion, that this project could not have proceeded if the developer and the church had been willing to make some compromises and to discuss with the community what would have worked within our community. But instead, they chose to just ignore that process and to move right into a rather aggressive stance by taking it to the Ontario Land Tribunal. And so now what we're left with is a 12-story glass tower that is going to cause multiple problems on the street. It's a larger building by a significant amount than it's currently zoned for, and the majority of the heritage building that currently exists will be destroyed. But I'm just going to, because I only have 2 minutes left, touch briefly on two of the main problems we see. The developers have been less than genuine in their report on parking. They claim there's ample parking for the 60 units that they propose, but their study was put forward in the summertime when there's parking on both sides of the street. They ignored the fact that in the winter there is only parking on one side of the street. So the report that they submitted, it's actually has really very little foundation. The same with traffic flow. They submitted a report that said, essentially, we're going to add 60 new units onto a street that has 100 units on it, but that won't increase the traffic flow. And I think that that's incredibly disingenuous of them. There's no way that that is not going to increase traffic flow. Already, since I lived there, there has been one child hit by a car because cars do tend to speed down that trying to avoid Gerrard Street. So there's also problems, and I think Tom is going to speak about this, with garbage pickup and proximity to property lines. Shading issues are a huge problem for many of the people in the neighborhood. They're asking for a variance for the height of the building. They're not in compliance with step backs and setbacks, amenity space, and numerous other problems that the city report identified. The bottom line was that this project was recognized both by the city and the neighborhood as being seriously flawed. And once again, I would like to say those flaws could have been resolved through discussion. If the developer had chosen to speak with the community, they could have been resolved. Instead, they chose to not speak with the community and try and resolve them.
Robert,
So
I'm going to have to ask you to
ask-
conclude
Yeah.
your remarks now.
I'm summing right up. So I would just ask that the city direct its legal team to oppose this application at the OLT on all the grounds included.
Thank you
in the
very much,
report for
Robert.
action.
Thank you very much. Okay. Are there any questions for Robert?
Yes, I have a question.
Councillor Fletcher, the floor is yours.
Robert, if I would just say that you're extremely disappointed by the approach by the church and by the developer not to have conversations with the community. Would that be correct?
It would be correct, and Ms. Fletcher, I'm particularly disappointed when I found out that the project was initiated in 2016 by the church, yet the neighborhood found out nothing about it until 2022. It had 7 years to say something to the community and say, what do you guys think? Here's what we're planning, but let's talk. And nobody approached anybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions for the deputy? Seeing none. How are we doing, Tom? Are you ready? Yeah. Okay. So, Tom, over to you. You've got 5 minutes.
All right. Thank you very much and appreciate being here. We're the owners of 12 Simpson Avenue, which is the house located directly to the east of 415 Broadview and share their entire eastern property line. We agree that the city staff proposed development is fundamentally inconsistent with the City of Toronto's official plan and the bylaws. The applicant's planning rationale appears to be solely driven by return on investment and in no way fits or connects with the surrounding properties. We interpret the proposal's exclusion of detail related to its impact on abutting properties as lacking care and consideration for its future neighbors. And other community developers, as previously mentioned by Robert, have successfully stayed within the official plan for church conversion and intensification projects, which we believe the applicant should as well. We appreciate the opportunity to provide context on this as it relates to all of the issues that the city has raised and agree with them. As it relates to heritage, we share the city's concerns around the proposal's heritage conservation strategy, and I believe that not enough of the structure is being maintained. As it relates to the appropriate density and massing, the structure is 38 meters tall. This is over the allotted amount. The density of 2.8 times is nearly 3 is over the 1 times it's allowed, and the violation of the 45-degree angular plane takes place on 10 of the 12 proposed levels. Now, I'd just like to draw your attention to some of the more egregious elements of the development. So, as we move through the presentation here, just pulling up their architectural plans, hidden in very, very small print, you can see the rear east, the allotted setback is 7.5 meters. They are asking for 1.56, so that's the proposal. 7.5 is the minimum. When we look at the plan itself, I've highlighted in red here, this is the G-type loading facility, which is they're proposed building out as an extension. This comes within 1.56 meters of our house and on top of the existing fence line. So what we show here is the existing fence line as it is, and we introduce the 6.1 meter concrete wall, which will be built into our backyard and halfway across our house if this development proceeds with the 1.56 proposed meter setback that they're asking for. So the proposed intensification, as they word it inside of Bousfield's planning rationale, can be comfortably accommodated on the subject site in keeping with the design principles and guidelines, including setbacks and stepbacks, which in this case is obviously not true. The proposed building extension of this loading facility as well. I'll draw to the left, which is the current view. 9 meters wide is the distance between the church and our house. In order to do a 3-point turn and safely exit onto Simpson Avenue, forward motion, city requires at least a 14-meter radius, and this is for garbage collection and pickup, so they do not have space there. Why they're introducing a loading facility there is beyond me, but it is my understanding, and it is, as they've stated in their community consultation, which the city hosted, that they will just use a private contractor, which is allowed to back out onto the very busy street of Simpson Avenue, including the location, and I would also note the location of L'Arche Community Center, which is directly across from this exit point, which is a community organization that assists with developmentally challenged adults, and they frequently walk up and down the street along with students and kids from the neighborhood. There's a red circle up at the top of the right-hand side there showing a window, okay? On top of this loading facility, and I don't even know if this is allowed either, is they plan on building their outdoor amenity space. Keep in mind, this is 1.56 meters from our house. That red circle is where my children's washroom is. So if we look at it here, this is just the architectural plans again. We can see they've clearly put their outdoor amenity space on top of their loading and or garage collection facility, and the location of my children's window is 1.56 meters away. So here is the proposed outdoor amenity space. So we have on the left as it currently looks, on the right after they introduce the amenity space. And I would highlight from the policy that it requires development to protect privacy with adjacent buildings by providing setbacks and separation distances from neighborhood properties and adjacent building walls and containing windows. This is highlighted inside of their report as well, and they absolutely do not follow it. So in closing, I would just say the proposal, this is their words, will fit harmoniously within the physical characters of the area and will establish an appropriate build form relationship with the adjacent low-rise residential users to the north and to the east, and I would say that that is 100% not the case. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Tom?
Yes.
Councillor Fletcher?
Yes, thank you for coming, and thank you for your slideshow. I'm glad we waited for that, Tom. It was very good. The, just the issue that I asked Mr. Osborne about, have you tried to speak with the church? I mean, it's been there for a long time, and it's a neighbor of the neighbors. So have you had an opportunity to actually speak with them about this development and the community concerns?
Our most recent engagement with the church, we sent them a letter after the community consultation just to say, you know, or this was after we had learned that they had gone directly from the community consultation to the OLT, which was likely, you know, filed the day after. And so we just sent them a letter just saying, listen, we really wish that you had engaged with us. We still remain open to converse on this. We've received no reply whatsoever.
Not received a reply.
Not received a reply. I know that other individuals who've reached out to the church themselves, the church has just directed them to the developer, so.
And they've not been in touch with you to have
Not
this
since.
discussion? Okay. So you live in what was the former manse, correct? So the church had built the church and then built this spot for the minister. And that 7.5 meters was considered how they wanted that relationship to be when it was first built. Would you agree with that?
It certainly looks as though they were respectful of the relationship between the two buildings when it was first built. It's strange that they would turn on that now.
So when it was built, there was no 6-meter wall beside the manse or 1.6 meters away from the actual place where the minister lived.
Yeah, I don't believe the minister probably would have wanted that, and I wouldn't either.
Thank you. And just on that 14 meters radius, because I'm going to ask staff to clarify this, it does seem a bit odd to me that with Vision Zero and our focus on traffic safety, and I'm giving transportation a heads up here that I'll be asking that question, that a private company would be allowed to operate in a way that might be unsafe and not up to a city standard.
It's very troubling for us to consider that that is one of the options that developers are considering. So, you know, where they can sort of cut corners or where, you know, they can try to, you know, fit in what it is that they want to do and have no regard for the safety of children that travel up and down the street or families. And it is a very heavy family trafficked street that the option would be, okay, let's not even try to reconsider another location for this, but let's just hire a private contractor that'll disregard the need to exit in a forward motion.
Yeah, we'll ask about that. And Riverdale is a very family-friendly and also inclusive community. Does it trouble you that there's not one unit of affordable housing in a project of this nature with a tax-free church that's never paid a penny in 100 and some years?
I would just say that we're not opposed to development whatsoever. We were actually really looking forward to inviting new families, you know, whether it's through affordable housing or any other, into our neighborhood. And you know, we just wish that it was done in a tactful way and not some sort of, you know, gross abomination, which is what is being proposed.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Tom? No, Tom, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us today.
Thank you.
I have one more deputy listed on this item, Sasha Grudchik. Sasha, are you online? Sasha connected to the meeting? Sasha, we have you online. Can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
There you are. My apologies for butchering your last name. Please.
Not at all. You wouldn't be the first.
When you're ready, please start. You'll have 5 minutes to address the committee.
Thank you. At the risk of being redundant, I don't want to go over some of the points that both Tom and Robert have made in association with this development. I just want to offer some qualitative commentary associated with the risks we see in the proposed development. The first has to do with the safety associated with the reversing of the garbage trucks into the loading area as proposed. We live at 17 Simpson, which is adjacent to the property, and there's a tremendous amount of foot traffic that uses the north side of our road to bring kids to the the neighboring schools, as well as Tom has identified. We have some developmentally challenged adults living in a community housing building on the other side, which oftentimes kind of walk around the neighborhood, and we see this as being a tremendous risk to the health and safety of those individuals associated with the proposed way in which that they want to deal with garbage. The second point I wanted to make, which hasn't been addressed, has to do with the environmental concerns. One of the large concerns that I've voiced previously is with regards to some of the wind shear and the old trees that we have in the neighborhood. As we do have a wind warning today, these types of days always cause us concern with large branches and limbs that come down as a result of the old trees in our neighborhood. The increased wind shear, I think, has not been identified or addressed by the developer, and a lot of the monitoring has not been done at a time where there's variability in weather. The next piece associated with the environmental concerns is that we have noted that there are some protected species of birds that do live and frequent at the church. I think they're called chimney swifts. And again, the developer has done nothing to address these questions and concerns that the city has put forward. And the final piece I think I just wanted to address has to do with the way in which that the developer and the church have not engaged with our neighborhood, and specifically wanted to highlight the Chinese Canadian community that we have in our neighborhood. There was absolutely nothing done to make any of these proposals, engagement, or outreach available in multiple languages to address the concerns of many of the adjacent properties that will be directly affected by this development in Chinese language. I know this may be a slightly technical point, but I think it's really disingenuous to sit here and say that they want to embrace the community with this development and not even make any type of accommodations for the diversity of the people that live in our development. As has been mentioned, we strongly oppose the nature in which that this has been proposed to be developed. It is looking to rezone the property itself into a commercial property, which transforms, which is currently zoned as residential. And we hope and we will provide any and all commentary, data points, and support to the city at the Ontario Land Tribunal. And we ask that you do represent the city and our needs at that tribunal.
Thank you.
That's it from me.
Thank you so much, Sasha. Are there any questions? No? Sasha, thank you for sharing your thoughts with us today. That concludes the list of deputants that I have. Are there any other members of the public who are here to make a deputation on this item? Seeing none, are there questions of staff? Councillor Fletcher?
Yes, thank you. I just want to take up with the 7.5 meters, the original manse and now the church, and that has been reduced to 1.6 with I think it's a 6 to 8 meter wall. Who can answer these questions? I don't know who's here, Chair.
If we could have someone from staff. Oh, here. Please, can you introduce yourself?
Sure thing. So through the chair, we have an array of city staff on the line. Councillor Fletcher, we'd be pleased to answer your question. Can you be a bit more specific?
Well, is that typical? I mean, I'm sure you think that's a little too close, given the original condition.
Through the chair, Councillor Fletcher, the setbacks are one of the items that we identified in our comments and correspondence with the proponents as requiring more relief.
And they did not answer favorably to you, I gather.
Through the chair, as you know, Councillor Fletcher, the matter has proceeded to an appeal under the Ontario Land Tribunal.
Okay, thank you. The issue of an overlook into a window, is that a typical condition where you would have an amenity space that would look directly into the neighbor's window?
Through the chair, I'm going to suggest that our colleagues in urban design would be best positioned to answer this adjacency. They are also on the line.
Thank you.
Good morning. This is Juliana Mason in Urban Design. Through the chair, this is something we look into and we usually try to get setbacks. If we can't get setbacks, we incorporate privacy measures, but that would be as like a final attempt, a physical distance. It's what we usually look for.
Thank you. Chair, it's very hard to hear online. Sorry. Yeah. While you're talking. So, thank you. Quietly, please. Thank you. The really important one is the garbage pickup, the solid waste pickup, and I don't know who's here to answer that. I'd like to understand that a little better, and whether or not there's a special rule for private pickup that doesn't meet the city standards. That's what I've heard this morning. That's what they're asking for. Could somebody clarify that from staff, please?
Hi there, through the chair. This is Daniel Reynolds, the Senior Project Manager for Development Planning Review and Transportation Services. Sorry, there's a lot of feedback coming from somewhere.
Yeah, it's really hard to hear you too, Danny.
Yeah, sorry. The standard requirement for any proposal is if it's over 30 residential dwelling units, an on-site type G loading space is required.
I can't hear. I'm sorry. You're going to have to try again. Mr. Chair, can't hear the our staff well.
Well, Councillor, at the beginning of the meeting, I did ask for us all to display patience for any technical difficulties
So
we're
maybe,
having.
Yes, I am.
And this is something that I simply cannot make better right now.
Maybe we could try again. He could transfer a little something, or I don't know if you're cutting in and out. Maybe if your video went off, it might be easier, Danny.
Okay. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me?
Much, much, much better. Thank you so much.
So what I was just saying is that for any development proposal over 30 units, you need to provide a type G loading space on site. And as per solid waste requirements, for the municipal public garbage pickup, that truck has to be able to back up and turn around on site and back into the public right of way in a forward motion. They're not allowed to back up over a public sidewalk. So we have advised the applicant that the proposed loading configuration does not work for public pickup. That said, if sites in the city do get approved and without public pickup, and they offer a private collection, which doesn't really follow the same requirements, it's a different sort of system, let's say. So our preference is obviously for public municipal garbage collection and a type G loading space that meets the requirements of the city.
Thank you. So we're considered that our standard for public pickup meets a safety standard for the neighborhood, right?
Through the chair, yes. I mean, we'd like to see municipal pickup for any site. So for an on-site type G loading space, that's what we're asking for.
I see. So I think probably this is going to go to council. I'll have a better chance to ask there, but I'm not sure with Vision Zero. Would the private pickup meet our Vision Zero goals? Backing out onto the street with a large vehicle?
Well, I mean, it can. Given that, you know, they can have an on-site staff person or a two-man truck that sort of that allows for like a flag man to protect the sidewalk and guide people or tell people to stop while the truck's backing up. It's not an impossible thing to configure. I think the governing factor is we'd like, for the sites like this, we'd like public pickup, not private pickup becomes an onerous sort of expense for residents.
I understand, but the private pickup, the public pickup, according to this design, can't be secured. So that's why they're going that way. And thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any other questions of staff on this item? No? To speak, Councillor Fletcher.
Yes, thank you. I'm very happy that we had a few deputants here today. This has been ongoing. The one deputant that said it started in 2016, and then, which I knew about in trying to assist the church in finding a way to use their site for affordable housing, because many years ago, then Councillor Vaughan and myself had a study showing how to repurpose churches, in particular for a tax-free building and site to make a contribution, a social contribution back to the city. I'm very concerned that the neighbors have not had any response from the church, which is a public institution with members there in the Riverdale community, or from the developer. And that I just want to say, in the nicest way, under the cloak of COVID, with all of the virtual meetings and everything else, we had a public consultation, and then immediately thereafter, they went to the Ontario Land Tribunal. I think there are some really major issues here. That 7.5 meter setback reduced to 1.6, that very, very high wall, only 6 units of affordable housing, and as well that the garbage site, it's a very, very busy corner because it's Bridgepoint Hospital across the street, so Simpson and Broadview, and the corner of Gerrard and Broadview is a bit of a snake pit. So the issue with a large garbage truck backing out onto Simpson is very, very, very concerning. So the safety standards that I think have to be met, the safety standards that we've got under Vision Zero, I think we need to meet those in every single development application. So with this, I'd just like to thank the community for their efforts here and continuing trying to make this a better development. They are not opposed to development. We have a lot. It's just the particular way this is happening and the approach of the developer to the community, unlike the one we had previously up the street, the Estonian House, which back and forth, and finally we did get a very good result from that. So I am fervently in favor of this going to the Land Tribunal to oppose this, and would also note that the heritage study that was done recently basically does designate the church, and that this particular application does not meet the tests of the heritage. And they believe that they could easily work around that, maintain the church, as has been done in many places, and build up from there. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'll be asking for a recorded vote.
Thank you. Are there any questions of the mover? Does anyone else wish to speak to the item? No? There's been a request for a recorded vote. Pardon me?
May I ask one question? Which church is it? What's the name of the church?
St. John's Presbyterian, the corner of Simpson and Broadview.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
There's a very interesting heritage report that I would suggest everybody have a look at.
Okay.
Part of establishing the Scott mission early on from that church, actually, into their mission into downtown.
Toronto is a city rich with history. Okay, so there's a motion in front of us. There's been a request for a recorded vote. Members, if you are in favor, please raise your hands now. Councillor Matlow, Councillor Fletcher, Councillor Sachs, Councillor Bradford, Councillor Perks, Councillor Moyes, Councillor Bravo, Councillor Malik. God, that was fun to do. It's unanimous, Madam Clerk. Okay. Okay. All right. If I could now have a motion to introduce items 45 and 46. Councillor Matlow, all those in favor, opposed, that carries.
I have to delay.
So those items will, oh, sorry, we have to do them one at a time, that's right. Item 45, if we could have that up on the screen. This is a new thing for me, so that's why I'm getting it wrong. Notice how technology makes our lives smoother and easier? Okay, so this is item 45, implementation of a speed hump on Rushton Road between Valewood Avenue and Maplewood Avenue. All those in favor of introducing the item? Opposed, carried. And next, item 46. Yeah, so, okay, item TE 1.46, expand on-street parking capacity on Manor Road West between Duplex Avenue and Manor Road West footbridge. All those in favor of introducing this? Opposed, if any, that carries. Okay. The next item with deputations is item number 9, 191 Dunvegan Road, application for fence exemption. I have two deputants listed. First is Connor Harris. Connor, if you can make your way to the microphone. Welcome to Toronto East York Community Council, Connor. You'll have 5 minutes to address us. You'll be able to watch your time on the screen behind me.
I do have a presentation to plug in.
Oh, okay.
IT, I think I just need the right.
Sure. If we could have someone from the AV, IT, someone who belongs to one of those. Okay, that went smoothly. So Connor, you've got 5 minutes. Start whenever you're ready.
Great, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, committee. My name is Connor Harris. I am counsel here on behalf of Elaine and Norman Friedman. They are the owners of the property at 189 Dunvegan Avenue, which borders the property at 191 Dunvegan that is the subject of this application, and specifically the fence that is the subject of this application separates my client's property at 189 Dunvegan from 191 Dunvegan. My clients are two senior citizens in their late 70s, early 80s, who have owned and lived at 189 Dunvegan for more than 30 years. They've cared for and maintained their property assiduously over those years, which includes in particular their backyard. And I will turn now to my presentation, which shows some photos of their backyard that they have taken a great deal of care to improve, maintain over the years, and it is really the highlight of their property. There's a large swimming pool, manicured lawn, gardens, raised deck, dining and entertaining area, and extensive gardening and flower plantings. The Friedmans don't have a cottage, and their backyard functions essentially as their de facto cottage and their escape in the summer months. They are opposed to the fence that's being applied for, as visual intrusion into their property, and their visual enjoyment of their property is very important to the both of them. The fences being applied for are approximately 2 feet higher than permitted and are an unsightly visual intrusion into my client's backyard. This is one photo of the fences, and further back, this is the fences seen from inside the house and from further back in my client's backyard. These fences were installed unilaterally and without notice to my clients and detract greatly from both their visual enjoyment of their backyard as well as potentially their property value. The height of the fence is exacerbated by the fact that my client's property is approximately 3 feet lower than the 191 Dunvegan property, making the fences appear even higher. The stated reason for the installation of this fence is as a potential quote-unquote safety issue to prevent basketballs from the basketball hoop that you can see there from escaping onto adjacent properties. In my submission, that position is without foundation. There is no risk to safety of other properties. My client's backyard is 50 feet wide and completely fenced in, so the only place the basketball could escape would be into their yard, and quite frankly, my clients have no issue with that. That's the way the property functioned and the way the basketball was used, or the basketball hoop was used for many years, and there were no issues with if a ball would come over the fence, my clients would throw it back over or give it to whomever was playing. They have no problem with continuing to do that. They simply don't want this intrusion onto their visual enjoyment of their backyard. And apart from that, the owner of 191 Dunvegan isn't without any remedies to remedy the situation. The basketball hoop could be moved, the basketball hoop could be realigned, or the fence could be changed in some other way that prevented basketballs from coming into my client's backyard, all of which would not affect my clients and would prevent this visual intrusion into their enjoyment of their property. They are, simply put, opposed to this fence. There's no issue with safety from their perspective, or frankly from any of the neighboring property owners who are unaffected by this. And the Friedmans are the only ones affected, and frankly this fence is being installed supposedly for their benefit, and they don't want it. They are not opposed to the fence being raised to the height that it's allowed to address the situation, or even to considering a more visually appealing version of the fence. And finally, I would note, you'll probably hear from the applicant that this was done to assuage concerns my client had back during the installation of what's called the sports court, about basketballs coming over their fence and landing in their backyard. My clients did oppose the sports court on that basis, but that was then. This is now. The sports court's been installed. My clients have accepted that. They should not have to accept this further intrusion into their enjoyment of their backyard. And subject to any questions, I thank you for your time this morning.
Okay, yep, that's your time. Thank you so much. Are there any questions for Connor? Councillor Bravo, I saw you first.
Thank you for your presentation. When you say alternative means to prevent the basketball from coming over, does that include netting? Would that be more visually appealing for your clients?
I think essentially...
It's quite common, and basketball playing on the street or in homes is very common in my community, and that's one of the solutions that people have implemented.
Right, and I think this is an attempt at putting in some netting, and it's opposed by my clients. So that's not, if it would look like this, it's not something my clients would be agreeable to.
Okay.
But my question is, like, netting would also be, like, you could also see the netting.
Right.
So is that more visually appealing? Because I think that you are arguing that this is a visual intrusion. I'm just wondering if that is a preferable form of visual intrusion to prevent the basketball from coming over.
Mike, I think the simple answer is no. My clients they don't care if the basketball comes over the fence, really.
Okay. Councillor Bravo, are those your questions? Yeah. Councillor Moyes, did you have a question?
Yes, thank you. Through the chair. Visual intrusion, yes, but is the fence considered illegal? Is it encroaching on your client's property in any way?
It's legal in the sense of it's not encroaching, as far as I'm aware, onto my client's actual property, other than the fact that it's approximately 2 feet too high in accordance with the city bylaws.
So it's 2 feet too high. So that's
the purpose of the application.
So if it's reduced to 2 feet, if it's in compliance in regards to the height, then will your client be satisfied with it?
My clients have no issue if the fence were to be raised to the permissible height under the bylaw.
Okay, thank you. Those are my questions.
Thank you. Are there any other questions of the deputy? Seeing none, Connor, thank you so much for your time today. I'll move to the next one. We have Eileen Costello. Eileen, are you present? Online? Eileen, can you hear us?
Hear me?
Hi, Eileen. How are you today?
I'm well, Councillor Perks. How are you?
Very well, thank you. Okay. So you'll have 5 minutes. You should be able to monitor your time on your screen. Please start as soon as you're ready.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Just before I start, I wonder if I could ask Madam Clerk to just pull up the agenda item on the screen, because there were a few photographs and a site plan I wanted to just draw to the attention of the councillors. I wondered if that could happen before my time starts, Councillor Perks, Mr. Chairman.
1 moment.
Thank you very much.
If I'm sorry, it's just Eileen, we don't really have someone assigned here who could be doing that for you. And it's a little bit awkward technologically for us to sort that out. Could I ask if you can make your presentation without those being put up?
Do you know what, Councillor? I'm going to do my best, and I know that this council in particular always does a good job of reviewing their reports. So I'm going to give it a shot and see how I do.
Okay.
And thank you very much. Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, you will have seen in attachment 6 of the staff report, which is in front of you, a site plan, which annotates the location of the fence, which has been referred to by my friend. The key point, and it's one that's made in our covering letter, which was part of the submission package to you this morning, is that the fence is actually 2 screens. Councillor Bravo spoke to netting. And if you look at the photographs which are contained, what you will see is that these are transparent 2 net panels which have been installed in front of the fence, which is along the property line, and of which have been installed directly behind the basketball hoop. The 2 net panels are approximately 5 meters in length, and that's all that's there. When compared with the very generous backyard that my friend referred to belonging to his clients, which he described as being more than 50 feet in width, and which you can see on the site plan is considerable in depth. The actual area which exemption is being sought for is less than 15% of the entire length of the backyard. My client specifically designed and had designed 2 net panels to be as open and as opaque as possible. And what you can see in the photographs which are attached is, in fact, there's no block of view of wind, of anything else which would be of concern. There's also quite mature vegetation in the form of trees which are immediately behind where both of these nets are located. My friend pointed out that the issue about basketballs is no longer a concern, but it was a stated concern by these neighbors. And as a result, in an attempt to respond as a neighbor, our clients had these nets designed and installed permanently so that there wouldn't be basketballs going over into the backyard, and in particular damaging the mature plantings, which my friend has spoken so eloquently about, and which we understood was a particular concern for Mr. and Mrs. Friedman. So, my clients are in a circumstance where they're told their neighbors are frail and elderly, and they're told their neighbors have spent a lot of time investing in their backyard. My clients have then installed 2 nets immediately behind the basketball hoop and nowhere else in order to prevent balls from going over into the perennial garden and damaging it, or potentially hitting someone on the other side of the fence who might be gardening, for example. I think that's quite a reasonable thing for a neighbor to do, particularly when that neighbor has small children who enjoy the game of basketball. And finally, Mr. Chairman, and through you to members of the committee, Councillor Moyes asked the question about whether a reduction in the height of the netting would be a response. But in fact, it's because of the change in grade between these 2 homes that the exceedance is required. And again, if the councillors could turn, and I can't turn them, to pages 6 and 7 of the staff report, what they will see is the exceedance is exactly the amount which is required to adjust the change in grade over the existing fence in order to prevent the basketballs from going into the neighbor's yard. So, in our respectful submission, this was an immediate response to ensure that the aggravation and the nuisance which the neighbors claimed the sport court would be for them was minimized. My clients did it in a way which I think, if you look at the netting, has been designed to be as minimally visually intrusive as possible, and has been done only in the area where it's immediately required to address both the change in grade and the fact that young kids do miss the basketball hoop on a regular occurrence. And finally, with respect to the notion that, the basketball should just come over the fence and then the kids should go around and bother the neighbors to get the basketball back, I think that's exactly the kind of nuisance and, again, damage to the garden that my clients were trying to avoid. So respectfully, we would request that Community Council endorse recommendation number 2, which is found at the top of the staff report before you, which is to permit this very minimal exceedance of the fence bylaw to allow for these 2 nets to be placed behind the basketball screen. Thanks very much, Councillor, and I hope that was clear enough, notwithstanding I didn't have any visuals. Thank you.
Thank you, Eileen. And again, my apologies. It's just we aren't in the practice of city staff, being responsible for putting up any display materials you might have. So in future, what we do welcome is if you want to do share screen and manage the visuals yourself. We can accommodate that.
Thank you very much, Councillor.
Okay. Are there any questions of Eileen? No? Seeing none, are there any other members of the public who wish to make a deputation on this item?
Actually, I have one question.
Seeing none, questions of staff. Councillor Matlow.
I apologize. A question just occurred to me.
Question to the deputy.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
I simply just one. To your knowledge, have you or your clients ever reached out to my office?
Eileen, are you with us? It may be she disconnected, Councillor, because
It's fine.
I said there were no questions. So that'll be my fault. Sorry. I think the purpose of the question was oh, okay.
Councillor,
Oh,
I've
there
now
we
been
are.
unmuted, and I'm happy to answer Councillor Matlow's question if that assists.
Please.
Thank you.
Good morning, Councillor Matlow.
Good morning.
Yes, Councillor Matlow, after ensuring that I was registered with the city's lobbyist register, we provided the package, which we filed with the committee, to your office yesterday afternoon. And offered to answer any questions.
Okay.
Yes, and offered to answer any questions which you might have.
Thank
yes,
you.
sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Are there any other questions for Eileen? Seeing none. I've already called. There are no other deputants on the item. Are there any questions of staff? Seeing none. Councillor Matlow, floor is yours.
Yeah, I asked that question just because I wanted to make sure that what I believed was true based on what my staff informed me. So I'm actually going to move to defer this for one cycle for this one reason. The solicitor for the residents did now reach out at the 11th hour and 59th minute, and I will, out of courtesy, give an opportunity of a month to see if there can be a resolution over a fight over the height of a fence between neighbors, as it should have been. Frankly, it's sad anytime you see this becoming sort of a civil matter in this case. That being said, though, the default position is always that you can't do something and then just consider, that it's fair to just apologize after, or maybe even not do that. We have a rule of the height of a fence. They knowingly exceeded that, and now after the fact, they're asking for an exemption without even really making any effort to try to resolve this through my office, where I am now in a place where I've got to make a decision in the middle of a fight over a few feet over a fence. That's absurd. It's not the way it should work. I don't want to be a referee between neighbors. So they've got a month to work it out, and if not, they're not going to get an exemption.
Are there any questions of the mover on the motion to defer? No? Anyone else wish to speak to the item? No? On the motion to defer for one cycle, all those in favor, opposed, that carries. Okay. Councillor Matlow, did you want to introduce?
Yes, I'd be happy to. So it's come to my attention that I believe
it's item 4. I
believe that Mr. Mark Richardson would like to make a deputation on 1.4, 645, 655 Northcliffe Boulevard. So I'm happy to reopen it to allow for that opportunity.
Okay, so we need a motion to reopen. We have the motion to reopen. All those in favor, opposed, carried. Why don't we go straight to that item? TE 1.4, 645 to 655 Northcliffe Boulevard zoning bylaw amendment application request for direction report. We have one deputant, Mr. Richardson. Mark, how are you? Long time no see. Okay, y'all ready? You know the drill, Mark. When you're ready.
Microphone's on? Yes? Okay. Councillors, our HousingNowTO.com volunteers have been working on site assessments for 2 of the City of Toronto's future Housing Now affordable housing development sites along the Eglinton Crosstown LRT stations at Fairbank and Cedarvale. Through that work, we have been introduced to various local organizations in the Little Jamaica neighborhood, including the Oakwood Vaughan Community Association, OVCO, the proposed residential intensification of the site at 655 Northcliffe Boulevard, is located inside the protected major transit station area for the Fairbank station. It replaces 6 bungalows with a simple 15-story, 159-unit detached building. It is similar to the existing apartment buildings that already exist on adjacent lots, and we support the above, as-is, above-ground built form for this development. Our volunteers participated in the WebEx public consultations with city planning in April. Almost all of the speakers agreed during that meeting that the arrival of the Eglinton Crosstown line, this site provided an excellent opportunity to encourage new, smart, transit-oriented development, but however, with the proviso that it also provided some new, dedicated, affordable housing capacity in an existing Toronto neighborhood. Replacing bungalows with denser multifamily housing near underground transit stations in Toronto is much better than auto-dependent single-family homes sprawling out onto the Greenbelt. During those consultations, it was clear that OVCO and others were predominantly concerned with the on-site provision of affordable family-sized units and accessible units for older residents at this site. This local priority is supported by our volunteers as well at HousingNowTO.com and by the Cooperative Housing Federation of Toronto. However, in today's staff report regarding the ongoing Ontario Land Tribunal process, there is a motion on the rental housing in the staff comments regarding unconfirmed rental replacement policy that might be effect on the site, but there is no specific policy consideration or staff comments specific to the on-site provision of new affordable housing on this site. In fact, the most strongly defined section of the staff report states unequivocally that urban forestry requires the redesign of the proposal to retain 3 city-owned trees. We have a housing crisis. We have an affordable housing crisis in Toronto. We have local nonprofit organizations who are looking for opportunities to partner with developers on these kinds of sites. As a council, we need you today to make it clear that while City of Toronto may have thousands of overlapping bylaw policies around new development, we have one primary policy priority in 2023 and beyond. That priority is new affordable rental housing. So today, we join with the Oakwood Vaughan Community Organization and the Cooperative Housing Federation of Toronto in asking Council to provide explicit direction to the City Solicitor and to the appropriate staff that the provision of affordable housing units, family-sized units, and accessible units for older residents should be considered as a City of Toronto priority during any OLT hearings and mediation processes. As always, our open data and civic tech volunteers are happy to answer any questions that councillors or city staff may have on affordable housing best practices and how to make the most efficient use of transit-oriented lands to help alleviate Toronto's housing crisis. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Are there any questions? Councillor Moyes?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just for clarification, are you supporting staff's recommendation here?
This is going to the OLT.
Yes.
The staff have a number of things I've identified in this report that are their concerns. One of their concerns is these 3 trees that you see in the green line on this chart. If you retain those 3 trees, it limits your ability to develop on this site. And if you don't create the number of the number of units the developer wants to on the site, it's going to be much harder for Co-op Housing Federation or the local community organizations to make an affordable housing deal. So this is where we are asking you to say clearly to the staff, to the city solicitor, when we are at the OLT on these kinds of infill projects, our priority is affordable housing creation, and some of the other policies, we've talked about them in the past, are going to have to take a back seat on some of these sites. They're very small sites, they're next to transit stations. we need to make some priority decisions on our policies.
Okay, and that's really a major concern?
Yes, yeah, there's not explicit direction on the materials that are being sent from the council to say affordable housing is the priority here. We'd like to see it on everything that goes to the OLT.
Yeah, I agree. Just one further comment, though. Those 3 trees, and talk about the environment and all those things, which is very important to, I think, this council and the city. Would you recommend that we plant some trees elsewhere just to compensate for the removal of those 3 trees?
Exactly. I mean, we are supportive of a green building. There is nothing greener than a 15-story box.
That's true.
Right? There's no setbacks on this. There's no angular planes on this. This is near transit. If you want to make this building greener, remove one of the 2 floors of parking that are underneath it because of its proximity to the new transit station. We can't let what are, 3 scraggly trees reduce what you can deliver on this site when it comes to housing in a transit-oriented neighborhood. Those trees can be replaced. Those trees can be replaced possibly on site, possibly somewhere else. But this is about priorities and choices.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bravo.
Thanks for your presentation. So you're saying that by not advocating for the 3 trees, there's a guarantee that affordable housing along these lines will be delivered in this development?
We have 21 Housing Now sites, and we can't guarantee delivery on the city sites at the moment.
Right.
So there are no guarantees until there's a shovel in the ground.
Right, so you see this as a precedent for how we make decisions about these kinds of developments? Is that what you're...
In general, our concern from the affordable housing development world has been that the City of Toronto has 1,000 policies and no priorities. We've been here in the past talking about parking minimums that have hampered affordable housing sites. We've been here talking about heritage and shadow studies that have hampered affordable housing sites. We need to talk about what our priorities are. In this particular case, it's a very constrained site, and you can see that they build quite close to the lot lines on it. If you retain those 3 trees, you impede the amount of housing you can build there unless they go much taller.
Just one last question. So if this is the old city of York,
yep.
There are a lot fewer trees. The canopy is almost non-existent. I know that neighborhood. Do you have any concerns about that?
I'll trade you the trees for a green roof.
Okay.
Thank you.
Councillor Fletcher has it.
Just have a quick question.
Mark, you've really got us going here.
It's a bit more of a general question, but at times affordable housing is called an amenity rather than a requirement. Can you comment on that, please?
I'd like to see it as a minimum requirement. I mean, this is inside the protected major transit station area, so if inclusionary zoning had passed, this would have had a requirement for affordable housing in it. That hasn't happened yet, so we need council to do what you can within the tools you have available right now to deliver affordable housing. Councillor Matlow spoke a lot about affordable housing during the campaign. The people in this neighborhood are asking for affordable housing. I wish they could be here to speak this morning. And, it's hard for people in the Oakwood Vaughan Community Organization to come to City Hall on a rainy Wednesday morning. They've got day jobs.
And are you aware that you can go to the Committee of Adjustment and ask to build a deck or expand the front of your home, and if a tree is there, you, as of right, can ask to have that removed?
Yes. Yeah, I'm aware of that.
So planning often allows, planning trumps the trees, and then there's a replacement requirement.
Yeah, and I know in other parts of Toronto, backyard swimming pools are often replacing trees. I think affordable housing is more important than a backyard swimming pool.
Thank you.
Okay.
Mark, can you cite any tool the City of Toronto has to require affordable housing at this project?
Absolutely none right now.
Thank you very much. To speak, Councillor Matlow.
I just obviously wanted to give, in the spirit of democracy, any deputant an opportunity to speak, but now I'm going to move the motion that I moved earlier to support the staff recommendations.
All those in favor? Opposed, if any? That carries. I believe I lost track. We've done 9. So I believe the next item we have deputants for is item TE 1.10, 624 Davenport Road, front yard parking appeal. We have one deputant listed, Barry Goldman. Barry, are you with us?
Thank you for letting me speak to this application. We're trying to put front pad parking in what is currently an existing driveway. It's a house that's fronting on Davenport, and we converted the existing garage to a second dwelling unit. We have obtained the required variances from Committee of Adjustment, and I understand that the street was balloted in order to arrive at a conclusion, and out of the 85 ballots that were sent out, 21 were received, 18 were in favor, 2 were opposed, and there was 1 spoiled ballot. I'd suggest that what we're proposing is an improvement on the existing condition. We're proposing to replace the existing asphalt driveway with permeable pavers. And I'll note that street parking is permitted on the opposite side of the street. So if the council sees fit to approve this application, we will have effectively added an additional parking space to the city by allowing the tenant or user that space to park in their own space instead of city parking. I think those are my points. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions of the deputant? I do have a question. Barry, I'm looking at the staff recommendations, and they're recommending that we require that to prevent unauthorized parking, the owner restore a section of the paved area to green space. How did that area become paved?
The area was always paved because it was a driveway that was permitting people to park in the garage. And
there was a garage. So Gary, there was a garage on the property?
There was a garage on the property that we've since converted. The garage is more or less at grade. So from Davenport, you drive across a short bit of asphalt into the garage.
I know the spot. So your client.
So we converted the garage to a dwelling unit, and at that time, because we had not yet obtained permission to create the parking pad, I think it's a standard condition of the city if the parking pad is not approved, that the owner is obliged to remove the curb cut and restore the curb so that people can't park there. What we're trying to do now is get that approval in order that we can have a legal parking pad.
So just another question, if I may. Your client made an application to add a residential unit on site, which is great. But at that time probably sought variances from the Committee of Adjustment to not have to have parking on site for that new unit or for the existing unit. Am I correct in that? Isn't that how it goes?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, that's helpful. Okay, are there any other questions for the deputant? Seeing none, Councillor Matlow, the floor is yours. Sorry, I forgot. Are there any questions of staff? Councillor Fletcher?
Yes, I did have a question about the Committee of Adjustment application. Did it advise that there could be a permit parking spot there? Front yard?
Did anyone from planning review this application? Do we have somebody available who did that? No? Did anyone from your shop review this application, or do you have any memory of that?
Through you, no, Councillor. I do
Okay,
not have
I'm afraid, Councillor Fletcher, that because it was a committee application, we don't have anybody here who can answer that question.
All right. And so just to confirm what you had said, that there was a conversion for the garage, and it was not, to be clear, there was no application for parking for the garage conversion.
So the question I asked the deputant is, did they request a variance from our parking regulations so that they could convert the unit without putting parking in? And the answer I got back was yes.
Yes. Okay, so they're expecting not to have parking in now.
They've already applied to build the unit without parking, and now they've decided to come back through an additional process to get parking.
I see, thank you.
Although they were granted the variance
Through the
with no
committee
parking.
adjustment.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions of staff? No? Councillor Matlow, the floor is yours.
I move the alternate recommendation to approve, and I want to provide all of you some context to this. To be very candid, I think, many items on this community council agenda we agree on. I think it's fair to say, and Councillor Perks would agree, that probably one of the few actually contentious issues that we really have substantive disagreements on often are about parking pads. I would submit to you that this is actually an anomaly, and there is nuance in this. This isn't about sort of do you rip out trees and green space or not, or do you is this wrong or not, or if this didn't have the support of their neighbors or not. This was in the context of a garage conversion. So in other words, your driveway is legal if it leads to a garage, but they converted to living space to increase their home space. So then, therefore, it's not legal to park there. So they want us to approve that. And they met all the technical, they met all the requirements, the physical requirements that the city requires. There was one, I would describe it, and I think it's fair, as a technical problem they had, which is that the response rate was, there's a threshold for response rate. So they had 85% of the neighbors' support, but there's a threshold for the response rate, and there was one spoiled ballot they lost. They didn't get the response by one ballot. I really think this is fair to say that this was a technical problem that they had. They met all the other requirements of the city. And in fact, if it wasn't just simply that they were one less, the ballots that needed to come in simply just to have that response rate, which is, in a way, I think admittedly arbitrary, we wouldn't be having this debate today. So I really do think it's fair to grant this. I think it's reasonable to grant this. They're not removing any green space. They're not cutting down any trees. They met all the physical requirements. It's an existing drive to a garage. It's simply the garage doesn't have storage bins anymore. It's going to be a place that they live in. That's the only difference. And I think it's really reasonable and fair. So I ask you in this context, and I would be, I'd be upfront with you too, if I was just fighting for a typical parking pad and then we debate it out. This is different, and I think it's reasonable and fair to these residents to grant it. So I ask you for your support.
Okay, I'm going to speak to this item as well. I'm going to move the staff recommendations, which are to deny the parking pad request and further to require the owner of the property to remove the unauthorized hard surface and curb cut that are installed there. Welcome to Toronto East York Community Council members. This is the one thing that we spend the most time on because there are strong differences of opinion. We have received advice from the Toronto Water Department that there is too much hard surface in the downtown area and that any additional hard surface increases the pressure on our stormwater system, which is often overrun. In my part of the city, we have had not one but two instances in the last 10 years of the entire stormwater system blowing out, literally blowing manhole covers many meters in the air, and a mix of rainwater and sewage contaminating the entirety of Sunnyside Beach and forcing us to close the swimming pool there for weeks at a time. We spend literally hundreds of millions of dollars constructing underground tunnels the size of subway tunnels to store runoff. So we've received very strong advice from the water department that wherever we can avoid additional hard surface, to avoid it. We have also received advice from the pedestrian unit within the transportation department that wherever possible, we should try to restrict the number of vehicles crossing sidewalks, for example, to access a parking pad. We have received advice from the urban design department that putting vehicles in front of properties ruins the look and feel of residential streets. We have received other advice that doesn't pertain in this instance. Many of us on council argue that parking pads should not be permitted in the downtown at all. In fact, in a majority of our wards, there is no process where you can apply to get a parking pad put in your ward. Councillor Matlow and one or two other wards on the Toronto East York Community Council at the edges do have this process where you can appeal, and there is a pathway. So there's often this moment where you will have competing motions, one to accept and one to deny. It's always been like one of the great thrills of being on Toronto East York Community Council to participate in this debate, but here it is for your very first time. Councillor Fletcher.
I'm going to support your motion, Mr. Chair. That comes as no surprise to many. But I also wanted to raise the one issue of how applicants are using the Committee of Adjustment to set them in opposition to the Community Council. So realizing that simple appeal here, they go to the Committee of Adjustment, get an approval, and then come and say, I have an approval. And we haven't figured out how to deal with that yet, because apparently it can go to the Committee of Adjustment. But it seems to me a bit of a backdoor method in order to try to get that. And I fully support what you've said for all the environmental reasons that we have in the city. It seems like it's just one here or one here, but I do have that moratorium in my ward specifically for that. And I do have the sewage treatment plant, which receives everything from everybody except for those who live in Etobicoke. And there are serious capacity issues. We're spending billions of dollars, so I think it's a good duty to try to keep as much water out, to have as many permeable surfaces, real permeable surfaces as possible in the city.
Thank you. Are there any other members to speak? Councillor Bravo.
Is this an opportune time to ask questions of the two movers? Or did I miss that?
That's okay. We're pretty inflexible here. Committees don't have as hard and fast
First, I want to ask Councillor Matlow. So just to be clear, this applicant went ahead and did the curb cut and repaved before having the permission to do that. Is that correct?
It was an existing condition. So they had a garage, they had the drive, they had the cut, and so then they sought to the committee to convert the garage into a living space. So it's really just about the internal use of the garage, and now they want us to allow them to continue using the drive as though the garage, they want to continue to be able to use it the way they would have otherwise.
All right, so they're looking for an exemption, like the previous issue in your ward.
They're not. They meet all the physical requirements, and they're not removing any green space or trees or any of the kind.
Okay.
From my perspective.
Right, from your perspective. Okay. So, and to Councillor Perks, I don't know exactly how everything works. This is my first community council meeting, but I will say that before I ask my question, that my ward, particularly the north end where I live, has the most intense numbers of front pad parking anywhere in the city. This is an area of major contention, and one of the challenges that we face in this community is that people don't trust the way that the city makes decisions, or how these get granted, or how these get, they spring up. In fact, real estate listings are now listing that there's a front pad parking, even though there's none allowed. And so there are entire blocks that are paved over and we have major flooding.
I hate
The
to.
question
Yes.
that I have is, what does it do to, in general, when you've been dealing with this, what does it do to the faith that people have that the parking, the front pad parking will be with complying with city policies? What does it do when, to you? What does it do when in terms of people's faith in an area like mine, when exemptions are requested, not having met the conditions according to existing policies, given the numbers of like illegal
Sounds like
or
a logic
sketchy?
puzzle.
Yeah. Is it a problem that we're, like, what is the fundamental
So,
problem in terms of how we operate around these policies of preventing?
In answer to your question, if I could design the process from the bottom up, I wouldn't have a cruel thing where you come to Toronto East York Community Council and it literally depends sometimes on which councillors are in the room as to whether or not you get it. I think the whole appeal process is fraught, and I would love if I could throw it out. But my efforts to get it thrown out have met with defeat at full city council. I think it's terribly designed that you can go ask a bunch of politicians to, just on your property, change the rules. I don't think that's a good way to do things. I also think that our parking pad policy should be consistent across the city. The consistency I would seek is that it be banned in every ward, but again, there are a variety of views across City Council.
Thanks to both of you.
This is why I love this issue. Okay. Yeah. So Ed, is this to speak or to ask? Yeah. Go ahead.
Again, I want to bring back global warming to the picture as well. You know, over the last several years, we've had intense rainfall in the city of Toronto and across this, the province. And it's getting worse. And I think, when we look at the bigger picture, long term, we have to make sure we have more green space to absorb water, in our cities. Just recently with Bill 23 being passed, and 39, we talked about the green belt being built on, and we as a council oppose that. And so again, we can't, in one instance, say, well, it's okay here and it's not okay over here. So again, it's a slippery slope that we go on when we look at it in silos in that way. So again, I think, every opportunity we get, which actually makes sure we have as much green space, be it small or large, to ensure that, we look at this in a holistic way. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other members who wish to speak to the item? Okay. With that, Councillor Fletcher, we're going to vote. Do you want to be in your seat? Okay, we take the motions in the order they were placed. So the first motion is Councillor Matlow's motion to replace the staff recommendations with a permission to build the parking pad. Okay, all those in favor of Councillor Matlow's motion, please raise your hands. All those opposed? Okay, that fails. On my motion to accept the staff advice to deny, all those in favor? Opposed? Okay, my motion carries. So the parking pad is not granted. We tend not to go on at such length for every parking pad because now we all know what everybody thinks, but it will come up again. Okay, the next item we have deputants on is TE 1.11, 1 Bloor Street West, Yonge Street, Bloor Street, and Balmuto Street, construction staging area time extension. We have two deputants. First is Mary Ellen Bench. Mary Ellen, are you connected? Oh, you're here. Hi, Mary Ellen, come on over. Sorry about that. So just settle in. When you're ready to go, you can push the button in front of your microphone and it should light up. And then when you're ready to start, just dive right in. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Mary Ellen Bench. I am counsel at the law firm Denton's and represent Ms. Rahi, the owner of the property at 1 Bloor Street West. So anyone who has been through the intersection at Yonge and Bloor is aware of this development. The property is well under construction. The first 11 floors or so with the podium has been constructed, and the builder, Ms. Rahi Developments, has worked closely with the city in obtaining permissions and permits. This is a request for a permit extension, not for a new permit. And it is for the second half of the building phase to allow construction until 2025. The staff report has a number of conditions. Those conditions are acceptable. The staff report also notes that the operations at the site have been acceptable to date, and I'd just hear more if there are questions. With respect to the second deputant, MAPRO objected to the first permit. They're objecting to this permit. The issues raised are dealt with in the staff report, I think, for the most part, except for the notice issue. And I wanted to advise that notice was provided to MAPRO on November 11th. It was couriered. The courier delivered it to the concierge at the front, who would not allow access to the building, but who knew who to hand it off to in the building, who at MAPRO. So I needed to make that point. I have had a short discussion with the councillor at the beginning of this meeting, and there are 2 amendments that would be coming forward that I've reviewed with my client, and the only thing I would like to say in that regard is that the permit request would allow Bloor Street to be temporarily closed. There will be 2 weekends in February where that would be needed to install some of the safety features to allow for the higher floors to be dealt with. So when we talked about a shorter permit application and we talked about a condition that would limit that, I'm hoping we can find a way to weave in that we could work with staff to allow for those lanes to be closed for 2 short weekends to allow for the additional safety features to be installed. And those are my submissions.
Thank you. Are there any questions of the deputant? I have a question. So, I'm sorry, in your application, does it specify that there would be full closures of the intersection for those weekends?
The application specifies closure on Bloor Street. It was filed by the technical staff, and
You don't know the answer to that
if
question?
If it specified a short period of time or a longer period of time.
Okay. Maybe I'll ask our staff that, or the local councillor could advise me. Okay, thank you. Are there any other? Yeah, Councillor Moyes?
Thank you. I know the intersection well. I spent a lot of time up there. And it's been an inconvenience for many people in that community, even though it's in Councillor Sachs's ward. It's adjacent to mine. How is the community being compensated for this inconvenience?
Well, unfortunately, the nature of that intersection, the nature of the downtown, there's a lot of construction, a lot of inconvenience. There was construction across the street. There's TTC construction. There's construction, well, on virtually every intersection, there's been construction and around the area. All city payments have been made. When the planning process went through that allowed for this building, compensation to the community was considered as part of the Section 37. The city still holds the Section 37 dollars and will decide how to spend it. We've been working with the city on some options, but it's a city decision on how that money will be used to compensate the community.
I understand that, but you know, the promises made, promises kept, right? I mean, the initial agreement was that this would be in place until 2022, and now you're asking for an extension until 2025, right? So, I mean, you've moved the goalpost. I'm just asking, yes, section funds have been given, or, you know, but it was for a period of time. So now, well, in the sense that, as it stands now, the permit was for 2022, is that correct? For the sidewalk, if I remember this correctly.
Yeah.
And now you're asking for an extension to 2025.
Yeah, it's not standard practice to get a permit for the entire length of time of constructing a super tall building like this. So dividing the permit into two steps, when the first permit was obtained in, I think it was 2019, nobody expected that permit to last until the building was completed. The completion date in 2025 was known by city staff.
Okay. Well, just as a side note, I hope that steps are taken to inform the public that this is going to be in effect till 2025. One of the things that my community has voiced to me is that these things happen in silos and no one really knows what's happening. The left doesn't know what the right hand is doing. And so I hope that...
I hate to be a nag, but do you have a question of the deputy?
Are you going? Yes, I do. Thank you, Councilor Perks, Chair Perks. Are steps going to be taken to inform the public that this is going to be an inconvenience to them until 2025?
All city processes have been followed and will continue to be followed. If there is additional notices, this building has gained a lot of attention in the media, locally and even internationally. So the progress of this building is well documented and is available on a number of websites. If there is something additional that you would like, I'd be happy to talk with you independently and see what we can do in terms of notice.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions of this deputy? Councillor Sachs.
Sorry about that. Okay, this thing you've just mentioned about closing the intersection for 2 weekends in February, there's nothing about it in the materials that have been provided to me. There's nothing about it in the staff report. Have you provided a specific description, schedule, and a specification of the area that you propose to close? Because even if we had passed this motion without amendment, it wouldn't allow you to close the intersection. So will you please explain exactly what it is that you're asking for and what it would affect?
It's not to close the entire intersection, but the way the building is being developed, it does have a fairly substantial safety cage, if you want to say. It's more than a net. There are the standard safety nets, but there's an entire structure that goes up a floor. When it reaches the 17th floor, that needs to be modified and a new design added to it. So it's just to install that safety feature. So it's a short-term closure.
Yeah, but what exactly are you proposing to obstruct?
Are we proposing...
Which parts of the public space are you asking to obstruct?
Well, when we spoke, you'd raised about not supporting the closure on Bloor Street. So it would just be a very short closure. It would have police there.
Please answer the question. Which parts of Bloor Street are you asking to obstruct?
Well, it would be where the building construction is, so it would be in front of the building.
How much of the space? Are you asking to obstruct the sidewalk? And then my next question will be, are you asking to obstruct the road? So I want to know, this is all news, right? There was nothing about this in the staff report.
No, this came out of your question when you talked about limiting what was applied for, so I'm sorry.
Okay, so you don't have specifications available right now showing precisely what you wish to obstruct, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
And it would be a short period of time, so when you mentioned not allowing it, I raised it to accommodate that, since I have one opportunity to talk.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? I'm sorry, we don't allow members of the public to question deputants. That's not how we do it here. Thank you very much for your deputation today. I'm going to call on the next deputant, which is Allison Spiegel. Allison, are you with us? Online? Allison, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you now hear me?
Yes, we can. Allison, thank you very much for joining us here today. When you're ready, we'll give you 5 minutes to address the committee.
All right, thank you very much. My name is Allison Spiegel. I'm counsel acting on behalf of Mapro Realty, Inc., the owner of 19 Bloor Street, which is at the corner of Bloor and Balmudo. We're opposing Mizrahi's request for the extension, allowing them to occupy Balmudo directly in front of the Mapro building as a construction staging area for Mizrahi's project that's occurring 1 block away for an additional 2.5 years. We filed written submissions that we hope will be considered. The question that was posed to the previous deputant was, is the community being compensated? I think the more interesting question is the one business owner whose business is being affected by the construction staging area being compensated? And the answer is no, they're not in any way, shape, or form. By way of a brief background, there was an original permit that was granted for Mizrahi to use the site between July and August of 2020. This is when they constructed the staging area, put a concrete pedestal, which allows concrete trucks to be seen idling for hours in front of Mapro's building. This was granted contrary to the municipal code for 3 reasons. 1, Mizrahi does not own the lands abutting the occupied portion of Balmudo. 2, they didn't ask for Mapro's consent. In fact, Mapro didn't even know about this until they saw the construction had been installed in front of their building. And they failed to provide Mapro with any notice of the occupation. Then they didn't abide by the terms of the original permit, and the city has done nothing to stop them. In 2020, a 2-year permit was issued from November of 2020 to November of 2022. Given at that point Transportation Services concession that the request ran afoul of the municipal code, they sought approval. They received the approval and the permit was granted. As part of that, the city entered into an indemnity agreement with Mizrahi, requiring that it be liable for all losses and damages that the city incurred. The installation and use of this staging area significantly interferes with Mapro's enjoyment of the property. There are concrete trucks idling in front of the building for many hours a day. There's unreasonable noise, vibration, dust, dirt, and smell. It obstructs the sidewalk and restricts access, and it restricts visibility into and from the building. Mapro is trying to secure a long-term and short-term tenant, and they're unable to do so as a result of this staging area. In addition, Mapro's in the process of renovating the Mapro building, and that will include an extensive renovation of the entire facade of the building, a project that is intended to begin in March of 2023. In order to do that project, Mapro will need to temporarily occupy the area outside of the building. But they're not going to be able to do that because Mizrahi, a developer putting up a project full block away, is taking up all the space in front of Mapro's building. Sorry, are you having trouble hearing me?
No, we can hear you.
Okay, sorry, there's lots of feedback on my end. MAPRO has and is continuing to suffer significant financial damages. We're asking that Community Council reject the Transportation Services recommendation and to not allow this extension to occur, or at the very least to require Mizrahi to seek MAPRO's consent. On November 14th, Transportation Services released a report for action. There's 3 noteworthy aspects of this. Number 1, the new request, the extension for the permit, it runs afoul of the municipal code. Number 2, it's recommending that City Council direct that Transportation Services not issue any other temporary street occupation permit for the same time period in the same space. Now, this is a new recommendation, and it's being done because MAPRO is, it's an acknowledgement that MAPRO is going to need this space for its construction project, and it's not going to be able to get it. The third thing is, it concludes that there's no financial impact to the city. It says Mizrahi is responsible for all costs, including payment of fees to the city, and these fees will be approximately $1.2 million. This is a request to close a portion of a city street located directly in front of the MAPRO building to construct a project a block away and add $1.2 million to the city's coffers at our expense. The city clearly recognizes that it's only fair that there be no financial impact to the city arising from this development. Why should MAPRO be treated any differently? Why is the city allowing Mizrahi to profit directly at MAPRO's expense? Why is compensating MAPRO not a cost of construction? In terms of the notice, we were not provided any notice. The letter that was sent had no suite and the wrong postal code. It was never given to us. And this is in addition to the fact that they've had our email address. They have council. It wasn't sent to council. We didn't even know about this. We have been given no notice of anything. This is something that is 100% hindering MAPRO's ability to do business. And the city is allowing this to happen, trying to remove all responsibility for its decision-making and just say, you bear the brunt of all the financial consequences.
Hi.
It is inherently unfair.
Allison, you're considerably over time. Can I ask you please to conclude?
Subject to any questions, I thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any questions for Allison? I don't see any. Allison, thank you so much for your time. Are there any other members of the public who are here to make a deputation on this item? I don't see any. Are there questions of staff? Councillor Sachs? Oh, members, if I could, just before Councillor Sachs starts, I've just been asked by the clerk to remind all of you when you're not speaking, please make sure your microphone is off. Evidently, we're getting some feedback on the YouTube broadcast. I'm almost certain this is my fault. Floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair Perk. So questions for staff. First is, why was the initial construction, the initial occupation permit issued only till today and not for the entire expected construction period of the project? Is anybody able to answer that?
Good morning, Councillor Sachs. It's Craig Cripps. I'm the manager for construction coordination. The original application was to actually encompass the construction.
Craig, I'm going to jump in. It's Gord. I'm going to ask you, can you turn your camera off? Your audio's cutting in and out.
Oh, my apologies, Chair. Through the Chair, Councillor Sachs, the original timelines for construction were 2025, but at the report went forward was for Bleach to pull that area off at 22. So the duration of construction has always been indicated to be significantly long than the original report.
Okay,
I apologize. I'm getting some feedback myself.
Yeah, we got the occasional word, but I didn't hear why the original permit was issued for only 2 years and not for the full construction period. Could you try again? And please speak slowly. About half your words are garbled.
Okay, yeah, my apologies. I don't know if I'm having technical difficulties at my end, but certainly through the chair to the councillor, the duration of construction was always believed to be until 2025, but the report went forward was only indicated to 2022, knowing that we would have to come back and report. There have been some with the site under some of the COVID conditions that we've experienced over the previous couple of years, but there was really an understanding that it would take longer than completion in November of 2022 is my understanding from the developer.
Thank you, Mr. Cripps. Are you able to tell us as well why the original permit allowed the occupation of the space on Balmuto without the consent of the affected neighbor?
The idea behind occupation of Balmuto was to try to minimize impacts in the area. We did understand that if staging was approved for Yonge Street, it could have gone to the extent that we would have to have done a directional closure of Yonge Street in a southbound closure, maintaining only one lane northbound because of the physical space. Occupation of Bloor Street to facilitate this work would also require full closure of the bike lanes and able to only maintain one lane in each direction. So it really was a decision around capacity in the area and impacts to the overall transportation network.
So I wasn't asking you why the concrete pour was directed to be on Balmuto. My question was, why was the permit given without requiring the consent of the affected neighbor?
I think that's through the chair to the councillor. I believe that might be a question better answered by legal as to the conditions and requirements of that. But certainly from our perspective, we look at it from impacts to the network, the transportation network in the area.
Mr. Cripps, do you
want legal to address your question?
Sure. Thank you.
Abby, yeah.
Through the chair, could I ask that you repeat the question? Is it why was the permit granted in the absence of consent by the neighbor?
Correct.
So my understanding is that under Chapter 743, there is delegated approval authority to the general manager to issue permits where there is consent of the neighbor. If there isn't consent of the neighbor, then it has to be decided upon by council.
That much I understand.
Just one, I'm just going to jump in. Could you just identify who you are and maybe my colleagues can get to know some of the staff here?
Hi, everyone. Nice to meet you. I'm Abby Moskovich. I'm the Deputy Director of the Planning Law Group with Legal Services.
We're going to rely on Abby very heavily over the next 4 years.
I already do. Ms. Moskovich, I understand the difference between the delegated authority and council. Does council have principles or procedures or rules for when it decides to give such permission without consent?
I don't think as a matter of course there are rules, at least not entrenched in the municipal code, that would guide council's decision.
Okay, I know it's not in the municipal code, but is there any other policy document or guidance or advice that guides council in when we impose these kinds of interferences without consent?
Not as far as I'm aware. That might be better answered by Transportation Services.
Well, we tried them already. Okay, back to Mr. Cripps. Mr. Cripps, do you have precise details of the proposed interference with the sidewalk and the road, of the adjustment of the safety cage that Ms. Bench referred to in February? Do you know how much space they propose to occupy and what the dates are?
No, we have not been approached or application been made for any closures of Yonge Street or Bloor Street to facilitate that type of work to date. I can say in the past, we have had applications for closures of Bloor Street when we have had some very large concrete pours for podium level, and we have approved in the past closures of Bloor Street west, immediately west of Yonge Street to Balmuto to accommodate the numbers of vehicles and equipment required for that activity. But we have not been highlighted any future closures at this time, to my knowledge.
Mr. Cripps, if this permit that we're dealing with today does not allow any further obstruction of the Bloor Street sidewalk or curb lane, Is there a process for Mizrahi to apply for specific permission relating to this safety cage, and what is that process?
The chair to Councillor Sachs, yes, there is a process, and that process is to make application through our permits and enforcement section within transportation services to apply for the appropriate, roadway that's required for their activity. So yes, there is a process, and the application must be made to transportation services section, permits and enforcement for that to start, and that's where we get engaged, our work zone coordination team at that point when application is made.
Question, Mr. Cripps. If Mizrahi makes such an application in the next couple of weeks, are you able to process it and decide it before February?
Usually through the chair to Councillor Sachs, yes, usually turnaround time. Obviously, the impacts of an arterial roadway closure, we do need more time to process, to put the appropriate, things in place for communication and notification. So it generally takes up to 2 weeks to approve a closure of an arterial roadway to ensure we have signage put out on the roadway, notifying of the dates and times of the closures so the general public can change their patterns of travel throughout the city as a result of that communication.
Thank you, Mr. Cripps.
Are there any other questions of staff? Councillor Moyes.
Thank you. Just one question. Matt Lowe brought up a few important points, but just one in particular that stuck out to me was that they will be renovating their building, in concurrent with One Bloor West. Is there any reason why they are not able to share the space in regards to trucks going in and out, in regards to renovation of in the vicinity?
Yeah, through the chair to Councillor Moyes, we currently do not have any application from 19 Bloor West to occupy transportation services right of way at this time for that work. Certainly, if there is something that comes forward, that was when we would have to address it and see how we can accommodate. But to date, nothing has been submitted to our permits and enforcement staff with transportation services.
So if an application was brought forth, then you could amend it after the fact, even though it's approved here today?
Through the chair to Councillor Moyes, we would try to accommodate, if possible, both of those activities at the same time. It may result in more impact on Balmudo, but it is certainly something that we would have to address if application is made.
Any other questions of staff? No? Councillor Sachs to speak. And a reminder, if you have motions, move them at the start of your
Thank you. I was remembering that, but I appreciate the reminder. Yes, I'm going to be moving 2 motions, please, to amend this item. The first is in relation to Condition 3. Condition 3 currently authorizes Mizrahi to occupy the entire sidewalk and the entire bike lane area for construction for the next 2.5 years. That's clearly not necessary for their construction of the building and shouldn't be authorized with a blank check by this committee and council. And so my motion is that the wording is proposed by transportation. It's a little meandering, but it gets the general point across that they can't block the sidewalk, they can't take the bike lane. So that's my first motion. My second motion will be to change the dates. So the proposal here is to allow them these occupations of Balmudo, of Yonge, and of the Bloor Street sidewalk until June of 2025. I have a number of outstanding questions that haven't been answered. One of them has to do with this question about the interests of the neighbor, and what the principles are for council making decisions to impose these kinds of costs on a neighbor. I haven't had an opportunity to be fully briefed on these and what the implications are for the city's policy. Secondly, I have not had an opportunity to understand how the construction at the One Bloor West site is intended to interact with the proposed construction by the TTC of a second platform at Bloor and Yonge. So I've asked a number of times for information about that, but it's going to take me a little time to get it. And so I don't think it's appropriate for this council to give a 2.5-year approval until those questions are answered. I'm therefore proposing to change the date, June 30th, 2025, throughout the document to March 31st, I guess, of 2023. That's 4 months from now. That will allow construction to continue, but in the meantime, I'm going to get more answers about what this looks like going forward. The third, so those are my two motions. I understand from the information from Ms. Bench today that Ms. Raki will likely have an additional application for those 2 weekends that she described to do something that none of us know the details of relating to the construction stage, but I prefer to wait for that until we actually have details and Transportation Services has a chance to review it. So my two motions are that we shorten the time of this approval, which does mean, colleagues, that we'll be talking about this again in March, but it's not so bad to talk about this again. By then, hopefully, we'll have all the relevant information. And that the area to be occupied be limited to the only that which they genuinely require. We shouldn't be permitting interference with critically important infrastructure for pedestrians and cyclists for long periods of time when it's not necessary. So those are my two motions.
Thank you. Are there any questions of the mover? Seeing none, does anyone else wish to speak to this item? No? Why don't we take your motions together as one vote? All those in favor, opposed if any, that carries. Thank you very much. Okay. Racing right along. I believe the next item we have is item TE, with deputations, hang on. The next deputation item is TE 1.18, implementation of permit parking on Pape Avenue between Kings Park Boulevard and Gertrude Place. We have a deputant listed, Catherine Sahagios. I'm sure I got that wrong. Hi, Catherine. I did?
Wonderful.
Random chance. There you go. Okay. Catherine, welcome to Toronto East York Community Council. You have 5 minutes to address the committee. You can watch your time right in front of me here.
Okay.
As soon as you're ready, make sure the button in front of the microphone is pushed and lit up. Away you go. Good.
Hello, honorable members of this committee, and thank you very much for this opportunity. This proposal states that it is to assist and help the community and the businesses of the community. I would like to explain to you and express my opinion as to why this is not the case. And before I do, I would like to also mention to you that I have a petition with approximately 60 signatures, as many as we've had time in the short opportune time that we've had to communicate with the neighborhood. And all of these are businesses and everyone with whom we communicated and is opposed to this proposal. As is, we, unlike the Queen Street and the King Street areas, are an R1 section. It is a very short section on Pape Avenue. We do not have, because of the old age of the area, the demographics, we do not have access to on-site parking. That is that the front of our properties, we cannot park. It's a little Yonge Street, mini Yonge Street on Pape. And the rear of our properties, we do not have access there, so we cannot park. Therefore, the only other places where we can park is the nearby side streets. There are two that are reasonable to park within reasonable distance. One of them is Selkirk Avenue, and the other one is Canyon Avenue. Also in front of our houses, of course, with limitations 7 to 9 a.m. and 4 to 6 p.m. because of the rush hours TTC commute in the area, PAPE subway station. So therefore, currently, we are able to park in front of our houses, which is a very good thing, being that we are a residential area, for free. And we will continue to do so because I understand that parking section will be asked to allow us with our existing pay parking permits, which we all have, at $240 a year. We will be able to access those in order to park in front of our houses. Two types of individuals park in front on Pape Street in this area: ourselves and visitors who come to see us, like our families, or any worker, care worker, or a plumber who comes to do work in our homes. The 3 hours invisible law that exists, which is not observed as cars are not ticketed throughout the city where else it applies, this serves us very well, the 3 hours, and we will continue to be able to park there for free. So therefore, this is not a concern to us because as we are currently parking, and we do take up most of these parking spots, therefore, what is the point of putting a parking meter? We will now be forced not to be able to park on the short side streets because anyone who comes to park there unpaid and sees that there's paid parking, why not go in the nearby spot where we pay to park on the 2 side streets where they can park for free? And of course, we pay to park there, and we have been paying to park there. The 3 of us who are here have lived in this area all of our lives. So most of the time we have had vehicles and we have paid to park in these short side streets, where it is important to point out that they switch from one side of the street to the other mid-month, and during the winter you can only park on one side. What that means is that between the 2 streets there are approximately 16 spaces to accommodate all of us. Of course, you can understand that we need to park overnight for many, many reasons, that some are obvious, but one of those is that no one likes to get up at 7 o'clock in the morning and to hunt to find a parking space on a side street where others have now parked and occupied the spaces, because 7 to 9, it is the rush hour commute. So therefore, the changes will be not beneficial to parking authority. They will be detrimental to us, given the fact that we currently have such a congestion of parking. I mean, to park any further away, somebody like myself would need a taxi to come home. Forgive me for saying that, but as you can see, I'm physically challenged, and so walking several blocks to come home is unreasonable. Also, it is unreasonable to have, when you are a resident owner, to have a paid parking in front of your house. My neighbor who is here and her deputation did not go through.
Catherine, can I ask you to wrap up now?
I'm watching the time. She asked that the marker in front of her house, 835, please be removed. These are eyesores, and they are rude to our families who will have to pay to visit us. So I ask that you consider that we are just asking for what other residents have, and we've been there a very long time.
Thank you very much for your remarks.
Very much.
Okay, are there any questions for Catherine?
Just wonder if the
Councillor
other
Fletcher.
gentleman is here. If they also wish to speak, they can still get on.
I was going to call. Do you have questions for Catherine?
No, thank you.
No? Thank you.
I just wanted to know, Catherine, there are quite a few businesses that section of PAPE,
They've
aren't
all
there?
signed in opposition.
Yes, but there are. I'm not asking if they've signed. I'm just saying there's quite a few, I know.
Not on our residential strip. There are
On Pape.
South, quite south, and the businesses that make up most traffic,
Yes.
Serrano Bakery.
Yes.
They sent me an email, they wanted to be here, they're in a position of the
I
leaders.
see. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Thank you. Are there any other members of the public who wish to make a deputation on this item? No? Okay. Are there any questions of staff? No?
I do have a question of
Okay.
staff,
The
and
floor
that
is
is
yours.
that I just want everybody to understand that there's been a lot of paid parking. This is an arterial road. Pape is an arterial, is that correct? And I believe that there's paid parking on Broadview, paid parking on Coxwell. These are the three big ones. So this would be a TPA addition on Pape as well, is that right?
Yes, through the chair, that is correct.
Yeah.
Would you please, sorry. Dan, why don't you introduce yourself? Because
yes,
many of the
please.
members of the committee won't know who you are.
Yes, through you, Councillor Perks. I am Dan Clement. I'm the manager of traffic operations for Area 1. So you'll see me here and you will see me at Scarborough. And I will be a frequent attendee and answerer of questions here for you.
And an excellent manager, I might say. And thank you for being here in person. Very much appreciated to answer those questions. So this isn't out of the ordinary, but it would be a change for residents. But basically what we're doing here is going to allow the permit parking here to be covered on Pape, and then anyone who has a permit can park there without paying in the pay and display, correct?
Through the chair, yes, that is correct. Permit holders on that street would be exempt.
Thank you. And I know it's a bit confusing, and I do want to thank the deputants, and I hope that you'll put your petition in to the clerk. I don't know if you did that or not yet. Okay, so can you advise the process for a deputant, please?
Yeah, if
Mr.
someone from the clerk's department could go over and speak to the deputant about the petition that they've collected. No, I called the only deputant that was listed, and then I asked if anyone else wanted to. Oh, you've changed your mind? No one else is listed.
Didn't
But if that's
understand.
fine,
She
that's
didn't
fine. It's not
understand,
important. Okay. Members, with your permission, can we go back to the deputant phase? Yeah, deputation phase. Okay. Would you like to come forward? Okay. We'll do that. I'm well aware, Councillor, and I will manage that, okay? Okay, are we ready to go? Hi, I'm Gord. This is all very relaxed and easy. So you have 5 minutes to address the committee. You can watch the timer right in front of me here. Make sure the button in front of you is pressed and lit up. And when you start today, tell us your name.
Deborah Bradbury. I live on Pape Avenue, and I live, now I don't know. I was disappointed that we were never asked or confronted, or there was no paperwork ever came in the mail, that I went out one day because the city or somebody's put a sign up on the pole out in front of my house that's covered up with a green plastic bag. So out of curiosity, I went out and looked, and that's how we found out that this proposal was in motion. And we live on the 2 blocks just north of the subway, which is mainly houses. The commercial part, that seems like a good idea. I agree to have meters, would be further up, Pape, up to Kings Park, from, say, Aldwych up to Kings Park, where there are many, many businesses. But south of that, it's all residential housing, and I don't think we need it. And I don't have parking in front of my house any longer for my friends, for my family, for any workmen or anyone that has to come to my house now has to pay to park. And that's pretty much all I got to say.
Thank you very much for that. Are there any questions? No, seeing none. Thank you. You may return to your seat now. So we're back in committee. Are there any further questions of staff on this item? No? To speak, Councillor Fletcher.
Thank you. And Deborah, I just want to thank you for going out the door and checking what that was, because I also didn't know that was happening at that time, and that residents weren't protected because actually there was no permit parking that was there. So obviously, when you have a permit, and many people do because it's a residential area, that as well as a business area, you still have, with your permit, you can park there without paying. So that's really what we're doing here. I would, making sure that you are protected from, that you are able to park there. So those bags, I think, will remain there for a while longer, because until we have the permit parking area established in that zone, there will be no paid parking. So that's the first thing that you need to know, because that would have happened quickly. They would have moved to do that, put in paid parking, and then you wouldn't have had a permit if you hadn't called and advised us. So you and your neighbors, thank you for that. We were able to catch that during the election. And during the election, we're unable to send out emails and do things for large numbers of people. So that also got caught in that net. So I want to apologize to you folks for that reason. What we're going to do today is simply allow for that area to be covered by permit parking. I have heard you talk about the businesses further to the north, etc. I will be in touch with Serrano Bakery. They're a business. Nobody expects to go on the Danforth and park for free when you're going to be buying from a business. And Pape is a major street. It's not a little wee, it's not any of the other ones. It's not Eaton, it's not Langford, it's Pape. It's a big arterial, and you do happen to live there. So I hear you about your, the issue with friends and family, etc. You should know that we do have a very good program that's called the overnighter or weekend, where you can, and I will make sure that this zone is able, that you're able to do that. So if somebody's visiting for the weekend, they can get a permit. And I don't know if it's oversubscribed, but I'll do something special so that you'll be able to access that, and people visiting you will access that with a much cheaper rate than the TPA rate, particularly for people and visitors. I understand about that because I did that a whole number of years ago. So that I know isn't exactly what you want, but I will definitely be looking at the entire thing and where that zone might change even for TPA parking. If there's more businesses to the north, move that there. But let me have a chance to do that. But first and foremost, let's just get the permit parking there, because most of you already have permits, but you can't park overnight on Pape Avenue. This does allow you to do that. So that's the one good thing here. So let's try to keep working on this and see if we can come to a solution that is a little better, but I don't think I can turn the whole thing back. That's what I'm going to say to you today. And with that, Mr. Chair, I would move that and thank the deputants for being patient today and coming and waiting for the morning. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Are there any questions of the mover? Seeing none, does anyone else wish to speak to the item? Seeing none. Okay, on the motion, all those in favor, opposed, that carries. All right, next. Councillor Sachs, you have an item we need to reconsider. Could you move that?
Yes, please. Thank you, Chair Perks. Yes, I'd ask that we reopen item 1.12. I've just received some advice from City Legal that the motion should be reworded.
Okay, so there's a motion to reopen TE 1.12. All those in favor, opposed if any, that carries. So we'll, just a moment, please. This is 110 through 116 Avenue Road, realignment of permit parking area 5E to exclude the development. Councillor Sachs, you have a motion that you want us to consider?
City Legal has asked for a change in the wording, but no change in the substance. that City Council approve the amendment to Schedule B of Municipal Code Chapter 925 to incorporate a revised map of the permit parking area 5E as shown on Attachment A of the November 14th, 2022 report from the Director of Permits and Enforcement, excluding the development currently located at 110 to 116 Avenue Road. So I ask everyone's approval that we use the wording recommended by legal.
Okay. Well, you know me, I always agree with lawyers except when I don't. Okay, so all those in favor? Opposed, if any? That carries. All right. So members, what I'm going to do now is return to the top of the agenda and go through all the held items. Our deputations for today are complete. The first item is TE 1.2, 221 to 221, 225, and 227 Sterling Road zoning bylaw amendment, draft plan of subdivision and rental housing demolition application, request for direction. Councillor Bravo, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. These are questions for staff. This is about rental housing demolition application of the historic and artistic cultural place, the Sterling Lofts. There's a huge concern in the community of artisans, cultural producers, artists in Davenport with respect to the loss of affordable units, and particularly in this case, the live-work units that are unique to this site. Can you confirm what city staff's position is regarding the preservation of these live-work units and what protections residents will be able to access?
Good afternoon, Councillor. This is Kim Matthews Hunter from City Planning, Housing Policy speaking. Through the Chair, the City's official plan housing policies require existing rental housing to be replaced in any new development where 6 or more rental units are proposed to be demolished. These policies do not specifically speak to the replacement of live-work uses. However, I can say that in the past we have been highly successful in working with applicants to replace live-work rental housing where it is permitted under the zoning bylaw. And I can also confirm that we have been working closely with the applicant on the rental replacement strategy for the site, both through the application review process and the OLT mediation process. And we have been clear throughout about our expectation that the existing live-work rental units are or ought to be replaced on this site. In terms of protections, tenants have specific rights under the Residential Tenancies Act, where existing rental housing is proposed to be demolished, and they will be further protected by the city's tenant relocation and assistance plan, which currently includes extended notice, financial compensation above and beyond what is required under the RTA, moving allowances, and special needs assistance.
Thank you. Beyond the replacement of units guaranteed on this site, will any of the other units in this 892 unit total be affordable? Will any be rental or are they all ownership? And finally, what is the size mix of the units proposed?
Good afternoon, Victoria Fuse here from Community Planning. Through the Chair, beyond those units that are subject to rental replacement, there has been no indication from the applicant that the tenor of the remaining units will be rental or their level of affordability. Of those 892 units that are proposed, 7.5% are proposed to be studios, 66.3% are 1-bedroom, 16.6% are 2-bedroom, and 9.6% are 3-bedroom.
Thank you. My next question, this is a large project with 3 tall buildings. What community benefits can be negotiated with the developer for this area? Considering the site's current historic use as a hub for arts and culture, what cultural space do you think can be negotiated into the proposed development?
Thank you for the question. Through the Chair, the application falls under the community benefits charge. We also refer to that as the CBC, and that allows the city to collect funds to pay for the capital costs and facilities and services that are required to serve development. So the subject site is known for its prominent contributions to the city's arts and culture economy, and staff are looking to maintain the site's contributions by making space for the arts and culture community. So we're interested in working with the applicant to explore the provision of an in-kind community cultural space that would support nonprofit arts organizations and local arts and culture programming within the subject site.
Thank you. And finally, through the chair, last year, City Council affirmed its intention to designate 221 Sterling Road under the Heritage Act. What's the status of this? And is the proposal's consideration of heritage preservation satisfactory to you?
Through the chair, the designation bylaw for this property was passed by council in August of this year. The property is therefore designated under Part 4 of the Ontario Heritage Act, and permission under the Act is required if alterations to the heritage attributes that are noted in the designation bylaw or the demolition of the building is proposed. The owners, though, have appealed the designation to the Ontario Land Tribunal. The current proposal, however, contemplates the complete demolition of all buildings and structures on the site, so no conservation is proposed, and this application therefore does not meet the official plan policies that require the conservation of heritage buildings.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions of staff on this item? Seeing none, Councillor Bravo?
Thank you. This building is of huge...
Do you have any motions to move?
Yes, I move that we adopt the staff recommendation from City Planning Division and the request for direction report and the approach that's been laid out with respect to the Ontario Land Tribunal appeal. It's of hugely important significance, and not just in Davenport, but in the whole West End, that this is a cultural site. It's a place where many artist careers have been launched, artisans are working there, and it's a form of employment that we need to foster. Securing the solid rental replacement agreement with the owner has to include the full retention of the live-work units, as these are unique, as I mentioned. And considering the size and scope of this development, as well as the feedback from the really robust community consultation that was carried out in October of 2021, it's important that the new development continues to function as an arts and culture hub for Davenport and for the rest of the city. And finally, just Davenport is deficient in parkland space, and we need to make sure that we're securing that through this development. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions of the mover? Anyone else to speak? No on the motion? All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Okay, members, we have very little work left. I'm going to propose a motion that we extend to complete the business of the meeting. Normally we break at 12:30 for an hour for lunch, but I think we'll be done in 10-15 minutes. So anyone want to speak to that? No? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. The next item I have, I believe, is TE 1.7, 759 through 763 Queen Street East zoning bylaw amendment and site plan control application. Request for directions, Councillor Fletcher.
Thank you, Chair. Our clerk has a motion on this, an additional 2, E and F. I'd like to move them here. Just has to do with...
Give us a moment.
Yep.
Okay.
It's just right beside Ralph Thornton Center, one of the city's building, but a major heritage building on the East End and Queen Street. So with that, I'd move these amendments and move the staff recommendation.
Okay, we'll take the amendments and the staff recommendations as a package. All those in favor, opposed, carried. Next is TE 1.13, 838 through 844 Broadview Avenue. Councillor Fletcher.
I'm sending this to council without recommendation, as well as 14.
Okay, so on a motion to send it to council without recommendations, all those in favor, opposed, carried. And the same motion on 14, send it to council without recommendations, all those in favor, opposed, carried. The next item I have, I believe, is item 45. Am I right about that?
Yes.
Yeah? Okay. So this is implementation of a speed hump on Rushton Road between Valewood Avenue and Maplewood Avenue. Councillor Matlow.
Yeah, I moved that hump.
So you move the recommendation in your letter?
Yes.
All those in favor, opposed, carried. Item TE 1.46, to expand on-street parking capacity on Manor Road West between Duplex and Manor Road West Footbridge. Councillor Matlow.
I move the recommendation in the letter.
Move the recommendation in your letter. All those in favor, opposed, carried. I believe that takes us to bills. Who wants to move a bill? You know what a bill is? Remember those? Yeah? We have our system of bills here too. So because we have delegated authorities over certain matters, we do have the ability on those matters to pass bylaws. So at the end of the meeting, we pass a bill that lists the bylaws that we are approving, and we pass a confirming bill to confirm that we all knew what we just did.
Mr. Chair, may I ask a point of order?
On a point of order, Councillor Matlow, I think this will be interesting to all of us.
I just wonder if under the new regime of Bill 3, must we now, as a local community council, await the mayor's verdict on whether or not he is going to veto the bills that we've just approved?
So members, I'm going to move that we vary the procedures and get an answer from staff on that point of order. Yes, Abby. Oh, what fun to be the lawyer in the room. My understanding is that the legislation says that the mayor can veto any bylaw passed by Toronto City Council, and that would include any passed under delegated authority as well.
That would be my understanding.
So my understanding is also that the clerk asks the mayor to publish a document as to whether he intends to veto any of the decisions we've made here, and we will have to wait a few days until he publishes that document.
That's correct. I don't know how it works, frankly, in terms of bills passed at community council versus the council meeting, and how when the clock starts running. I'd have to look at that.
Okay, but nevertheless, there is a clock, and the mayor has his right to veto decisions made by this body.
That's correct.
Thank you very much. Only where there are bylaws, not like if we direct staff to produce a report, he can't veto that.
What about a fence height exemption?
I think that's a little,
That's a bylaw.
that's a gray area.
That's a gray area?
Well, I think there are bylaws, and then there are confirmatory bylaws, and I don't know what that means in terms of his veto power.
Could I ask you to come prepared to the next meeting to give a more full answer on that question?
I can do that.
I want to know if I should advise residents, if they want 2 feet on a fence, to contact Mayor Tory. I want to understand that. Thank you.
I don't think that was a direct question to you. Okay. But these are important things. I've also been informed that the clerk will have the manager for clerk services present at the next meeting. So if we have ongoing questions about how the mayor is allowed to override decisions of this committee and in what circumstances, we can ask them next time. Okay? If that will be helpful to you. So with that, I need a volunteer. Because I think you said the least in the meeting, Councillor Malik, I am going to ask you to move the motion on the screen. If you could just read it.
That bills 14 to 27, 32 to 42, 45 to 56, prepared for the November 30th, 2022 meeting, one of the Toronto and East York Community Council, be declared as bylaws and passed subject to Section 226.9 as the City of Toronto Act 2006.
All those in favor? Opposed? That carried. I wish I could have deleted that last little phrase, but oh well. And the confirming bill? I'll just do the confirming bill. Okay, I move that the confirmatory bills to confirm the legislative proceedings of the Toronto East York Community Council acting under delegated authority at meeting 1 on November 30th, 2022 be declared as bylaws and passed subject to Section 226.9 of the City of Toronto Act 2006. All those in favor, opposed if any, that carries. Members, that completes our business. You're free to dance through the daisies or whatever else it is you intend to do with the rest of your day. Have a great day. Bye.